Chapter 1379. Long Yu was completely surrounded by the 24 doppelgangers of Heaven Fire Doyen. Boundless aura surged towards him from all directions, making him unable to move at all. Although he knew that the 24 doppelgangers of Heaven Fire Doyen were definitely illusions created by the spirit design, and it was impossible for them to truly emit such a strong aura. But under the influence of the spirit design, he was unable to ignore the aura pressure. It became extremely difficult for Long Yu to hold the cluster of flames that was 10 miles away in his hand. However, fortunately, there was a month for Long Yu to get used to it. As long as he got used to the aura pressure, Long Yu's mind and willpower would be tempered, and he should be able to ignore the aura pressure that was not real. There was a saying in the human clan and the demon clan that the stronger one's mind was, the firmer one's willpower would be, and one would not be easily affected by other factors during a battle. This included mental attacks, illusion attacks, and so on. At this moment, Long Yu felt that he should temper his own mind. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to break the spirit design of the 24 doppelgangers of Heaven Fire Doyen. These doppelgangers of Heaven Fire Doyen are all illusions, including their aura pressure. As long as I can recognize this point, I can easily escape from this spirit design. As Long Yu thought to himself, he gritted his teeth and closed his eyes. This would help him to imagine that everything around him was an illusion. The aura pressure surged endlessly. Even though Long Yu had closed his eyes, he could still feel the waves of aura pressure landing on him, suppressing him completely, making him unable to move at all. Fortunately, as time passed, Long Yu gradually got used to the aura pressure. The more he got used to it, the less easily he was affected by it. The long tempering of his mind soon began. In the first 3 days, Long Yu did not make any progress at all. Although he had gotten used to the aura pressure, it was impossible for him to escape from its influence. But from the 4th day onwards, Long Yu's situation became better. The aura pressure that Long Yu felt was getting weaker and weaker. This was because he was constantly under such a strong aura pressure, and he had finally gotten used to it. In just 3 days, the strength of Long Yu's mind had been tempered to a relatively high level. In the following period of time, Long Yu's improvement was even faster. His willpower was not weak to begin with. Now that he had persistently hinted to himself for 3 consecutive days that everything around him was an illusion, he had already accepted this fact from the bottom of his heart. Because of this, when Long Yu opened his eyes on the 4th day, the surrounding aura pressure started to weaken in his eyes. The energy in Long Yu's blood and dantian was finally released from the state of being completely stunned. It began to slowly flow, circulating within Long Yu's body once more. As a result, Long Yu's fingers could finally move, and as time passed, more and more parts of his body were freed from the pressure. 10 miles away, the clump of flames was still burning. As long as Long Yu held the clump of flames in his hand, he would be able to pass through the illusion array. In other words, he would have passed the Heaven Fire Doyen's disciple recruitment test. On the 4th day, Long Yu was still unable to move his position, but he could move his fingers slightly. On the 5th day, Long Yu's legs were finally freed from the pressure, and he could move slightly towards the cluster of flames. Although its speed was very slow, it was at least starting to move. At this rate, it would take at least half a year to reach the cluster of flames. It was impossible to grasp the cluster of flames within a month. Fortunately, Long Yu's body was constantly being released from the pressure of the imposing aura. He could be sure that it was not that the pressure of the 24 clones of the Heaven Fire Doyen had weakened, but that the pressure was just an illusion. As long as his willpower and spirit were strengthened, he would naturally not be affected by the pressure of the imposing aura. Moreover, Long Yu had cultivated the pure world body, so he had a natural resistance to the power of illusions and illusions. After today's experience, Long Yu felt that it was necessary to continue to improve his pure world physique. If he could cultivate the pure world physique to the peak of the 9th layer, what kind of tyrannical effect would it have? Long Yu knew that to improve the pure world body, he would need a lot of creation items. However, did he lack creation items now? Not at all. Although most of the creation items that he had exchanged at the army headquarters had been brought back to the Void Galaxy as resources for the development of the entire alliance, Long Yu had also left some for himself. There were still many celestial crystal-level creation items, but he had not had the time to cultivate them. The trial at the Demigod College was still quite dangerous. Long Yu thought that he had to cultivate properly before the next trial began. The 6th day, the 7th day, time continued to pass, and Long Yu continued to advance towards the cluster of flames. The pressure of the 24 Heaven Fire Doyens became weaker and weaker in Long Yu's eyes, and he moved faster and faster towards the cluster of flames. Finally, on the 10th day, although Long Yu had not completely broken free from the pressure of the 24 Heaven Fire Doyens, he was already less than half a kilometer away from the cluster of flames. Although I can hold the cluster of flames in my hand and break the formation if I break the formation just like that, my spirit refinement doesn't seem to be complete, Long Yu thought to himself. Finally, he decided to let his spirit refinement reach the peak first. Right now, there was the pressure of the 24 Heaven Fire Doyens, and it was an excellent environment for spirit refinement. If he missed this condition, it would not be so easy to refine his spirit in the future. Therefore, Long Yu did not directly go forward to hold the cluster of flames in his hand. Instead, he stayed where he was and continued to resist the strong pressure, strengthening his willpower and spirit. However, Long Yu discovered a phenomenon. On the 10th day, the red color of the cluster of flames suddenly became a little lighter. Long Yu observed carefully. This could not be an illusion. Although it did not become much lighter, it was indeed a little lighter. He did not know what was going on. Could it be that this cluster of flames is becoming lighter with time to record the score of the challenger? Long Yu thought to himself. This cluster of flames would still be red for the next 10 days. If he held it in his hand during this period, he might pass the illusion formation with full marks. After 10 days, the color would become lighter, and his score might not be as good. However, Long Yu did not need any score. He only needed to pass the formation and see if Heaven Fire Doyens was in the Twin Star Turbulence. He did not really want to be Heaven Fire Doyen's disciple. Therefore, Long Yu continued to calmly continue. Anyway, the time limit for challenging the array was 1 month. He did not panic and continued to temper his spiritual will. In this way, he persisted for 29 days. In these 29 days, he was almost unaffected by the pressure of the 24 Heaven Fire Doyens clones. In the illusion formation, his entire person was like an ordinary region, and he would not be obstructed at all. This did not mean that Long Yu's willpower had been tempered to the point where it could no longer be improved. However, his willpower was now completely sufficient to deal with the illusion formation. After the 29th day, Long Yu leisurely walked forward for 1 kilometer. Finally, he stretched out his hand and grasped the cluster of flames that had already dimmed twice in his hand. Ordinary flames were not a threat to Long Yu. Even if his entire body was on fire, it would not hurt him. However, at this moment, when Long Yu held the flame in his hand, he felt an intense burning sensation. This cluster of flames was definitely not an ordinary flame, but a derivative of the power of primordial fire. However, with Long Yu's current willpower, it was impossible for him to retreat. The key was that he did not need to retreat at all. So what if one of his hands was burned? Long Yu cultivated the martial arts mystic technique, Devil Dust Heart. As long as the Devil Dust Heart was not destroyed, he would not die and could be reborn indefinitely. Long Yu was extremely tough. He held the cluster of flames in one hand. Although his arm was constantly being burned by the flames, Long Yu was also constantly activating the Devil Dust Heart to regenerate his arm. If it was someone else, Long Yu really did not know how to hold this cluster of flames. Perhaps only a cultivator who had also comprehended the tyrannical power of fire attribute divine runes would be able to grasp this cluster of flames and not have to worry about being incinerated by it. However, although Long Yu did not comprehend the power of fire divine text, this cluster of flames could not destroy him. The power of the Devil Dust Heart was not just for show. Although he had only cultivated it to the second level, the speed at which his body was reconstructed was enough for him to deal with the current situation. As his arm was constantly burned and reconstructed, Long Yu also became a little more familiar with the power of the cluster of flames. Gradually, it would not be burned so easily. As for Long Yu, he realized that he might not have enough time. After all, it would be the last day before he would be able to hold onto the cluster of flames. Thus, he covered his arm with the power of the 9 nether divine characters to protect it. In this way, the cluster of flames could not directly burn Long Yu's arm. As long as Long Yu's power was not exhausted, and the defense of the 9 nether divine text was not broken, the cluster of flames could not hurt Long Yu. Under such circumstances, Long Yu clenched the clump of flames tightly. Then, he saw the 24 clones of the Heaven Fire Doyen finally start to disappear. Even the waves of illusory aura pressure were instantly wiped out. Chapter 1380. When the 24 clones of the Heaven Fire Doyen dissipated, Long Yu knew that he had finally broken through the mental illusion array. At the same time, the cluster of flames in his hand also gradually disappeared from his line of sight. Very quickly, it turned into nothingness. Everything was just an illusion. In the past month, everything that Long Yu had seen was not real. Only in that 1 month's time, Long Yu's mental willpower had improved greatly through tempering. This was of great help to him. In the future, if he were to encounter mental attacks, his resistance would be much stronger than before. Long Yu didn't think too much about it. He once again spread his spiritual perception to the surroundings. He discovered that after passing through the mental illusion array, he had arrived in a more serene space with the Nether Dragon Blade. Outside this space, the power of the twin stars was constantly circulating, and it was extremely chaotic. However, in this space, it was a peaceful scene. The chaotic twin star turbulence did not affect this space. The space wasn't very wide, and it only had a radius of slightly more than 10 miles. However, it was completely possible for the Heaven Fire Doyen to use this place as his residence. Although there were no buildings or the existence of a pocket dimension, since the Heaven Fire Doyen wasn't here, it was normal that his residence wasn't here. He could bring his home wherever he went. After all, as a peak weapon refinement master, the Heaven Fire Doyen definitely had a set of weapon refinement equipment for himself. He couldn't keep these equipment in one place. If that was the case, he wouldn't have so many residences. It was most likely that the set of weapon refinement equipment was always carried by the Heaven Fire Doyen. In his pocket dimension, it wouldn't be too troublesome to bring it around. If that was the case, the Heaven Fire Doyen could come and recuperate at any time in the middle of the twin star turbulence. No matter how long he stayed, no one would come to this place. It seems that the Heaven Fire Doyen isn't here. Long Yu felt that it was a pity. He was certain that he had arrived at the deepest part of the twin star turbulence. However, apart from passing through 4 mental illusion arrays, he didn't even see the shadow of the Heaven Fire Doyen. It was obvious that the Heaven Fire Doyen was not here for the time being. His trip was a wasted one. However, it could be said that he had gained something. After all, in the past month, he had greatly improved his mental willpower. This not only increased his resistance to mental attacks, but could also produce many unexpected effects on his future cultivation. There were gains. Even if it wasn't a waste of time, Long Yu wasn't too disappointed. Since Heaven Fire Doyen wasn't here, he would go back and look for Long Zaiqian to see what was going on over there. During this month, Long Yu was unable to receive any news from the outside world. He also didn't know how Red Oriole and Moonsong were faring. However, since it was a trial in a demigod academy, Moonsong was a veteran. She probably wouldn't accept anything too dangerous. There shouldn't be any accidents. However, Long Yu couldn't inform the other party about his current situation. The twin star turbulence had a very serious interference to information. With Long Yu's current strength, there was no way he could send a message out. Of course, as long as Long Yu left the twin star turbulence, he would be able to contact Red Oriole directly. Before they separated, both of them took out a space-time imprint to record the other party's location. Through the space-time imprint, they could communicate with each other. Although the space-time imprint was very precious, it wasn't something difficult for Long Yu and Red Oriole to obtain. Even if they used their Legion merits to exchange for it, a space-time imprint was only worth around 10,000 Legion merits. Therefore, both Long Yu and Red Oriole had exchanged for one earlier in case they couldn't find each other when they were separated. Long Yu turned around and was about to leave this peaceful space when he suddenly felt a message appear in his mind. "Wait for 3 months, and I will return." These simple words told Long Yu some useful information, and also caused Long Yu to be shocked because these words seemed to have directly sounded out in his mind, and not from any other place. This was simply inconceivable. The meaning of these words was very simple. As long as Long Yu waited here for 3 months, the Heavenfire Doyen would return to the twin star turbulence. At that time, Long Yu would naturally be able to see the other party's true body. After all, when these words sounded, Long Yu felt a similar aura from the 24 clones of the Heavenfire Doyen just now. It had to be the Heavenfire Doyen's true body. Moreover, the other party had sent a message to Long Yu from an unknown distance. He actually already knew of Long Yu's existence. Could it be because Long Yu had passed through so many mental illusion arrays? That was possible. When these words entered Long Yu's mind, Long Yu suddenly became conflicted. Should he wait here for 3 months or leave to find Long Zaiyan? After all, waiting here seemed to be a waste of time, but if he went to find Long Zaiyan, it would be a little disrespectful to the Heavenfire Doyen. No matter what, the Heavenfire Doyen was still very important to Long Yu. It was related to the future development of the entire Void Galaxy. As for his father, Long Zaiyan, it was only a personal matter of Long Yu. Other than him, it was also related to his mother, Bei Yu Yao. Bei Yu Yao was now in Long Yu's pocket dimension and could be said to be with Long Yu. When he saw Long Zaiyan, he could directly ask Bei Yu Yao to come out and meet him. "If I wait here, I can cultivate for a while and try out the effects of the divine wine. But I can't send a message to Red Oriole and Moonsong," Long Yu thought to himself. It was also at this moment that the consciousness of the Void Nether Dragon Blade transmitted to Long Yu through Little Void's will. Little Void told Long Yu that she could leave in Long Yu's place and send some messages. This surprised Long Yu. After thinking for a while, he knew that this was indeed feasible. "Take this space-time imprint with you and leave the twin star turbulence. After passing the message to Red Oriole, return to the center of the twin star turbulence. You must be careful." Long Yu was very concerned about Little Void. Little Void's mind was connected to Long Yu's, so she naturally knew what Long Yu was thinking. After returning the space-time imprint to her inner world, the Void Nether Dragon Blade turned into a stream of black light and flew from Long Yu's location towards the periphery of the twin star turbulence. When flying over, Long Yu had encountered several mental illusion formations in succession. His speed was indeed not fast, but when he returned, the Void Nether Dragon Blade would be able to travel alone. In less than half a day, it would be able to leave the range of the twin star turbulence and pass the message to Red Oriole and Moonsong. This way, Long Yu planned to cultivate here for 3 months. 3 months was enough for him to do many things. First of all, he had the divine wine on him. After drinking it, he could increase the speed at which he comprehended various powers. It was extremely useful. In addition, he had stored a lot of world spirit energy in his little world. He could use it to cultivate a wave of Devil Dust Heart. Moreover, the world spirit energy he had accumulated in the past month could be used to account to the Bone Race and the Remnant Race. The deal between Long Yu and Yu Wufang had not been carried out yet. But in this month, Long Yu had provided the Bone Race and the Remnant Race with 10 times the amount of world spirit energy. It was about time to find him and ask for an unbounded rank martial skill jade slip. "Since you want me to wait for 3 months, then I'll wait here." This heavenly fire Doyen probably thinks that someone has broken through his formation and wants to take him as their master. Long Yu smiled and didn't think too much about it. Since they wanted to wait, he would wait. It wasn't a waste of time anyway. There were many things he didn't have time to do, and he was worried that he wouldn't have time to comprehend things. Now that he had 3 months, it was not bad. Let's drink a bottle of divine wine first. Let's see how quickly I can comprehend the power of the enlightenment rank 9 nether divine characters. Long Yu calmed down, and after planning out his next cultivation plan, he took out the 3 bottles of soul-connecting wine that he had prepared. He had exchanged 5 bottles of divine wine in the demigod college, but 2 of them were temporarily given to Red Oriole. He wanted to improve their strength a little. Now that Long Yu had time, he was going to drink a bottle of divine wine first. This thing is worth 4 million battlefield merit points per bottle. I want to see how much it can improve my understanding of power. Long Yu thought in his heart as he opened a bottle of soul-connecting wine. Then he lifted his hand and opened the bottle in his hand, then opened his mouth and drank it down. As soon as the divine wine entered his stomach, Long Yu felt as if he had become a little dizzy, and his connection with heaven and earth seemed to have deepened. In such a state, he remembered what he needed to do. He immediately took out the 9 hell steel and entered the space inside it, ready to comprehend the revelation level 9 nether divine characters. The revelation level 9 nether divine characters were only found in the space inside the 9 hell steel, and if he wanted to comprehend them, he had to go to the 9 hell steel. After entering the space inside the 9 hell steel, Long Yu was once again surrounded by sticky revelation level 9 nether divine characters, which were derived from the primordial power of the metal element and much more powerful than most of the other divine characters. The effect of the divine wine hadn't appeared yet, but Long Yu had already felt the effect. In such a state, the speed at which he comprehended the revelation level 9 nether divine characters was twice as fast as before. Moreover, as the effect of the divine wine spread out, Long Yu's speed of comprehension was getting faster and faster. Let's see to what extent I can cultivate here in 3 months. Long Yu was very confident in his cultivation speed. Now that he had the divine wine, he had no doubt about it. Since he had 3 months of free time, he might as well cultivate well. Chapter 1381. As Long Yu drank the divine wine, the speed at which he comprehended the revelation level 9 nether divine text in the 9 underworld's monument grew faster and faster. At the beginning, the speed increased by 1-fold. Then it climbed to 2 times, to 3 times, to 4 times. At the same time, Long Yu's consciousness became more and more hazy. Many strange thoughts appeared in his mind, just like how he usually drank. He was probably a little drunk. If it was just ordinary wine, Long Yu would not be drunk at all. But this divine wine was obviously not ordinary. While increasing Long Yu's cultivation speed, the soul-connecting wine was also causing him to become more and more intoxicated to the point where he was gradually losing consciousness. This kind of situation was something that Long Yu had not expected. Even though he had just tempered his spirit and raised his willpower to a whole new level, he still could not stop the attack of intoxication caused by the divine connecting wine. But what excited Long Yu was that the more he lost consciousness, the faster his cultivation speed became. It was 10 times, 20 times, and still it was increasing. How much can the divine wine increase my cultivation speed? Long Yu thought in his heart. He didn't slack off in the slightest. Even if he became drunk, he still treated cultivation as his #1 priority. After concentrating, Long Yu didn't need to use his consciousness to control it. He could naturally comprehend and cultivate the revelation grade 9 nether divine text. After all, Long Yu's entire body was surrounded by the sticky revelation grade 9 nether divine text. When the cultivation speed increased to 50 times, Long Yu was almost very unconscious. He did not even know what he was doing, but he still subconsciously cultivated without the slightest pause. What happened next? Long Yu could not remember clearly because he had completely lost his consciousness. He was attacked by the drunkenness of the divine wine, and there was no way to break away. When he woke up and opened his eyes again, it was already a day later. The effect of the divine wine was 1 day. When Long Yu woke up, he immediately checked his cultivation and found that he had actually comprehended 45% of the revelation level 9 nether divine text. This discovery made Long Yu pleasantly surprised. In the 3 months he spent in the Void Galaxy, his comprehension of the Revelation Level 9 Nether Divine text increased from 10% to 30%. But now, in just one day, his comprehension of the Revelation Level 9 Nether Divine text increased from 30% to 45%. This speed was simply unheard of. Based on this effect, the Divine Spirit Wine can increase one's cultivation speed by 100-fold. It's a pity that it only lasts for a day. Otherwise, if I drank the Divine Spirit Wine and slept for a few days, I'd have fully comprehended the Revelation Divine text of 9 Nether by the time I woke up. Long Yu couldn't help but get excited. The effects of this soul transcendence wine were simply too heaven-defying. It was no wonder it was priced at 4 million Legion Merit points. Most people wouldn't be willing to buy it. It must be known that ordinary cultivators would not be willing to spend 4 million army merit points, even if they spent 3 months cultivating slowly. For ordinary cultivators, 4 million army merit points were definitely enough for them to do a lot of other things. It was purely a waste to use it to buy the Divine Spirit Wine to speed up their cultivation. Only people like Long Yu would drink the Divine Spirit Wine to speed up their cultivation. Generally speaking, the Divine Spirit Wine was quite popular in the demigod colleges, but not so many people in the outside world. Of course, normally speaking, the Divine Spirit Wine was not sold in the outside world. Even in the headquarters of the Battlefield Legion, the Divine Spirit Wine was rarely seen, because it was not something that ordinary alchemists could make. Even the demigod colleges only had a dozen bottles of Divine Spirit Wine. According to Moonsong, the Divine Spirit Wine was a cultivation resource that only appeared at the beginning of every year's expedition, and then there would be another 10 bottles half a year later. It was basically impossible to appear at any other time. In other words, the Divine Spirit Wine was made by a special person. 10 bottles were made every 6 months and sent to the demigod colleges for sale. And Long Yu bought 5 bottles at once. The next time he returned to the demigod colleges, there might not be any left. However, Long Yu was not in a hurry. After all, there would be more in half a year. He would save enough army merit points first and buy them all at once half a year later. The speed of cultivation was a great surprise to Long Yu. He decided to drink the remaining 2 bottles of Divine Spirit Wine together. The increase in his comprehension of the Enlightenment grade 9 Nether God text had greatly increased Long Yu's actual combat power. Every 10% he comprehended would double the power of his god art. This was no joke. Then, Long Yu drank the Divine Spirit Wine. It took him 1 day, which was almost equivalent to 3 months of cultivation, to understand 55% of the Revelation Level 9th Nether language. Of course, the cultivation speed of the Revelation Level 9th Nether language was getting slower and slower. However, Long Yu was pleasantly surprised to discover that while drinking the Divine Wine increased his comprehension speed of the Enlightenment Level 9 Nether Divine characters, the Metal Elemental Heavenly Spiritual Source in his small world also increased his comprehension speed of Metal Elemental Genesis power. Drinking 2 bottles of Divine Spirit Wine was equivalent to giving Long Yu 6 more months of cultivation time, and Long Yu's understanding of the power of gold had reached more than 20%. This was something Long Yu sure hadn't expected. However, he was pleasantly surprised that the Divine Wine had such an additional effect. The increase in the metal element's origin power also increased the speed at which he comprehended the Revelation Level 9 Nether Divine characters. In such a state, Long Yu continued to drink the 3rd bottle of Divine Spirit Wine. However, the 3rd bottle of Divine Spirit Wine lasted a little less than the previous 2. Of the 24 hours in a day, he woke up after about 20 hours. This made Long Yu's heart skip a beat. This Divine Spirit Wine probably had the same effect as elixirs, but it was not as obvious as elixirs, where the effect was halved on the 2nd bottle. The duration of the 3rd bottle of Soul Transcendence Wine was 4 hours shorter, greatly reducing the effect of cultivation. It seems that I'll have to use the Devil Dust Heart to reconstruct my body when I drink the Divine Spirit Wine in the future. Otherwise, the effect won't be so heaven-defying. Long Yu thought to himself. This time, he was just experimenting and wasted a little, but it didn't matter much. Although the duration was shorter than 4 hours, it was still equivalent to more than 2 months of cultivation. He had finally comprehended 60% of the Revelation level 9 Nether Divine text and 30% of the Metal Elemental Genesis power. In total, the destructive power of Long Yu's innate magic power had increased by more than 3 to 4 times. It was no exaggeration to say that Long Yu's current strength was barely enough to fight against a great ruler-level opponent, and he would not easily be at a disadvantage. No one will believe this. After all, Long Yu's martial realm was only a lower ruler. At the level of a lower ruler, being able to defeat a middle ruler was already considered a genius. Being able to defeat a high ruler, like Long Yu, was already considered a genius among geniuses. But now, Long Yu could fight against a great ruler-level existence with a lower ruler-level cultivation. This had undoubtedly created another legend. Of course, this was only Long Yu's guess. He had not confirmed it, but he truly felt his strength increase explosively. Just 3 bottles of Divine Spirit wine allowed him to comprehend 60% of the Revelation level 9th Nether language and 30% of the power of gold. This was simply shocking. The explosive increase in strength made Long Yu a little unfamiliar, so he returned to his small world and created a few primordial shadows for them to spar with. The results of sparring naturally weren't very good, but Long Yu couldn't find any opponents on the same level as him to spar with, so he just had to make do with familiarizing himself with his strength. 7 days had passed since Long Yu arrived at the center of the Twin Star Turbulence and received the news that Heaven Fire Doyen had told him to wait for 3 months. In these 7 days, Long Yu drank 3 bottles of Divine Spirit wine, increasing his strength by several times and familiarizing himself with this explosive increase in strength. The time it took for his strength to increase was too short, and to Long Yu, it could be said to be sudden. At the beginning, he was not able to control it well. After all, it was not cultivated bit by bit, but had unknowingly grown while he was drunk, which was why such a situation occurred. Fortunately, Long Yu grasped his strength very quickly. In 3 to 4 days, he had completely grasped his current strength. At least, there wouldn't be any situations where he used too much strength, and he could use as much strength as he wanted. After 7 days, Long Yu turned his attention to other aspects. After drinking the Divine Spirit wine, it was time to cultivate other things. He had comprehended 60% of the Prophet Level 9 Nether Divine text, and it was impossible for him to have any further breakthroughs for the time being. Without the help of the Divine Spirit wine, it would take at least half a year to comprehend 10% of the Prophet Level 9 Nether Divine text, and Long Yu didn't have that much time to comprehend it. Next, there are many things I can do. I can either cultivate the Devil Dust Heart, and the Heaven and Earth Spiritual Chi has accumulated quite a lot under the effect of the Holy Spirit Source. Or I can absorb the creation item to increase my martial realm, or I can cultivate the Pure World Body. Both are not bad. Long Yu pondered in his heart and quickly decided to raise his martial Dao realm first. He had already stepped into the lower Dominator realm for a long time, but he hadn't broken through because there wasn't a need. The opponents he encountered were either too strong or too weak. Raising his martial realm by 1 level wouldn't have any effect, but since he had the time, raising his martial realm wasn't a bad choice. In addition to the effects of the 3 bottles of Divine Spirit wine, he could instantly increase his strength by 10 times, almost reaching the level of a second phase Dominator. In other words, as long as Long Yu could break through to the middle Dominator realm, he would even have the strength to fight against Red Oriole. Of course, he wouldn't be Red Oriole's match in the end. After all, Red Oriole was a genuine second phase Dominator and not an ordinary second phase Dominator either. Her true combat strength was comparable to a 4th or 5th phase Dominator. Chapter 1382. Since he had thought of it, he would do it. Long Yu was waiting for the Heaven Fire Doyen to appear anyway, so he had nothing else to do. Red Oriole also had the Void Nether Dragon Blade to send a message, so Long Yu didn't need to worry about anything. He currently had 10 heaven crystal level creation items on him, all of which were 2nd and 3rd grade. Each of them was worth 4 to 5 million battlefield army merit points. Compared to the 3 bottles of divine wine, the value of these creations was obviously higher. After all, Long Yu had given so many alien demigod corpses to the army on the battlefield, and he had exchanged them for a total of 1,000 heaven crystal level creations. Long Yu took 10 of them for his own cultivation, and Red Oriole also took 10. As members who were going to explore the ancient alien ruins together, it wasn't too much to take this bit of cultivation resources. Little White and Shuel Luo wouldn't say anything. If the 10 heaven crystal level creation items were all used to increase his realm, it would be enough for Long Yu to make a leap to a higher ruler. However, if that was the case, the increase in strength would be too great, and even Long Yu wouldn't be able to control it well. It was best to maintain one realm for half a year before continuing to improve. Otherwise, it would be difficult to control the power well, and there would be hidden dangers for the improvement of his martial arts realm in the future. Therefore, Long Yu only took 2 of the creation items, both of which were 2nd grade heaven crystal level. It was enough for him to improve his martial arts realm. The time he spent cultivating in the Twin Star Turbulence was destined to be the time when Long Yu's strength skyrocketed. This was also because Long Yu had been accumulating for a period of time, and he didn't really need to increase his combat power in the process. Long Yu had already accumulated too many cultivation resources. If he used them all up in one go, even if his martial arts realm only increased by 1 level, his overall strength would be more than 10 times stronger than before. The 2 heaven crystal level creation items were continuously turned into creation power under Long Yu's absorption. They were absorbed into his Dantian and integrated into his small world. The difference between a middle ruler and a lower ruler was that the size of a minor world had to be expanded from 10 billion kilometers to 20 billion kilometers. Long Yu had once attempted to break through to the middle ruler level in the ancient outsider ruins. However, due to some accidents, his progress had been obstructed. Now that he had started again, his small world's territory had already expanded to a circumference of 13 billion kilometers. After absorbing the creation power from the 2 heaven crystal grade creation items, he could easily step into the middle-level ruler realm. To normal martial cultivators, these 2 heaven crystal rank creations were something that could only be discovered by luck. This was because their value was simply too high. They were worth 8 to 9 million battlefield merit points. Even a normal 7th phase dominator would have to work hard for a year or 2 to earn that much, let alone a cultivator like Long Yu. Therefore, no one could improve their martial arts realm as easily as Long Yu. Although it was easy, Long Yu didn't dare to be careless. He progressed steadily and used the creation power to expand his small world. From a circumference of 13 billion kilometers, it quickly increased to 15 billion kilometers, then 17 billion kilometers. At this time, the creation power from the first heaven crystal grade creation item had already been completely absorbed by Long Yu. Immediately after, the creation power from the second heaven crystal grade creation item began to surge into Long Yu's small world under Long Yu's control. As the small world continued to expand, Long Yu also sensed that his basic strength was increasing. Moreover, his basic heaven and earth spiritual chi recovery speed was also slowly increasing. After merging with the Holy Spirit source, the heaven and earth spiritual chi recovery speed in Long Yu's small world increased by 10 times. Now he had accumulated a large amount of heaven and earth spiritual chi. He could use it to raise the devil dust heart by several levels. Long Yu still did things wholeheartedly. Now that he was raising his martial arts realm, he didn't think about anything else. After absorbing about 2/3 of the second heaven crystal grade creation item, the territory of his small world had finally expanded to a circumference of 10 billion kilometers. When it reached this threshold, Long Yu felt that his strength had suddenly broken through. From a lower ruler to a middle ruler, he had finally reached this threshold. Ordinary people would need at least 3 to 5 years to reach the middle ruler from a lower ruler to a middle ruler. It wasn't just because of the lack of cultivation resources, but also because of the existence of bottlenecks for others. With all these factors added together, Long Yu's martial arts realm improvement was abnormally easy. Moreover, he basically didn't have any existence of bottlenecks. This could be seen from the fact that he didn't have any bottlenecks when breaking through to the ruler mystic realm. Perhaps this was because Long Yu had previously grasped 80% of a 9 nether imprint and obtained some power related to the Juyo Dragon Emperor's inheritance. As for the higher levels of martial arts realm, Long Yu had some understanding in advance, so he naturally wouldn't encounter any bottlenecks. After stepping into the middle ruler realm, the most important change was that Long Yu's basic strength had increased by 3 times. This was different from the previous increase of 3 to 4 times in the Revelation Grade 9 Nether Divine characters. Now, Long Yu's basic strength had increased. The benefit was that all of Long Yu's strength had increased, including martial techniques like the Wild Battle Celestial Body. Previously, when the Revelation Grade 9 Nether Divine characters increased his strength by 3 to 4 times, it was at most an increase in the power of Long Yu's martial techniques and mystiques that were based on the 9 Nether Divine characters. But now, it was a comprehensive increase, an increase in overall combat strength. Long Yu's entire person became refreshed. He had finally stepped into the middle ruler realm, another step closer to the peak. Although he was still very far from the demigod level, Long Yu's plan was still progressing steadily as he took one step at a time. I haven't finished absorbing this heaven crystal grade creation item. Since that's the case, I'll use it to cultivate the pure world body. Long Yu thought to himself, but didn't stop cultivating. It took him 3 days to raise from the lower ruler to the middle ruler realm. It took him more than 10 days to cultivate the pure world body, and he also used up all 8 of the remaining heaven crystal level 2nd grade creation items. Clearly, the mystique of the pure world body was more difficult to cultivate than balance control. It was more difficult to improve, and it required more creation power. The creation power consumed from the 6th level to the peak 9th level was enough for Long Yu to break through to the Great Ruler Realm. In comparison, he didn't dare to break through to the Great Ruler Realm casually. After all, he would definitely regret breaking through without a good foundation. On the contrary, if he used the creation power to cultivate the pure world body, it would bring great benefits to Long Yu. First, the pure world body increased from the 6th level to the 7th level, and then to the 8th level. This directly increased Long Yu's resistance against mental illusionary control methods by 4 times. If he continued to encounter the mental illusion array set up by the Heaven Fire Doyen, the difficulty for Long Yu would be reduced by 4 times. This was a huge change. Under such circumstances, it was basically impossible for others to use illusions to confuse Long Yu, or use control methods to suppress Long Yu, unless the other party's cultivation was at the 5th rank Great Ruler Realm. This was Long Yu's guess. Unless the other party was especially proficient in this aspect, then it was possible that the 2nd or 3rd rank Great Ruler Realm could also control Long Yu, or pull him into an illusion. But normally, it was impossible for ordinary cultivators to keep Long Yu here. Moreover, this was the passive effect of the pure world body, cultivated to the 8th level. It didn't need Long Yu to control it. It could be activated naturally. When the pure world body reached the 9th level, the effect was even more heaven-defying. The pure world soul mirror was a derivative of the pure world body cultivated to the 9th level. It was similar to the balance light that was derived from the peak 9th level of balance control, and its effect was extremely powerful. The pure world soul mirror's only effect was to reflect. This effect was rarely used by Long Yu, but when it was used, it would be extremely heaven-defying. The explanation was very simple. The pure world body's martial arts effect was to absorb and resist all control methods, mental attacks, illusions, and other such things. The pure world soul mirror reflected all the mental control and illusions that were used on Long Yu back to the caster. The most terrifying thing was that it could actually reflect 10 times more. Heaven-defying, there was nothing else to describe it other than this word. The Pure World Soul Mirror consumed a lot of energy, and if he wanted to use this move, the Pure World body would lose its defensive effect for a period of time. But in a crucial battle, as long as the Pure World Soul Mirror was used, it could definitely drag the enemy into a state of eternal damnation. Just think about it. The current Long Yu could withstand all control methods, mental attacks, and illusions from at least a 3rd stage Dominator. Even if there was a 7th stage Dominator expert, if they wanted to use such methods on Long Yu would directly use the Pure World Soul Mirror to reflect the opponent's power 10 times more. The strength of the opponent's power could even be compared to a demigod realm existence. Although this move couldn't be used continuously, a burst of power at a crucial moment was enough to drag the enemy into hell. Such a terrifying method made Long Yu sigh with emotion. It was worthy of being a martial arts secret technique recorded in the 9 Underworld prison tablet. It made him want to know even more what kind of heaven-defying effect would appear if he cultivated the Devil Dust Heart to the peak of the 9th level. From the cultivation of the first 2 levels, it could be seen that the difficulty of cultivating the Devil Dust Heart was more than 10 times more difficult than cultivating the Pure World body. In other words, it would probably take more than 100 2nd-grade Heaven Crystal grade creation items for Long Yu to cultivate the Devil Dust Heart from the 6th level to the 9th level. This number basically accounted for about 1/3 of the creation items obtained from the army on the battlefield. Although there were 1,000 Heaven Crystal grade creation items in that batch, there were only 200 2nd-grade Heaven Crystal grade creation items. The rest were either 3rd grade, 4th grade, or 5th grade creation items. A 2nd-grade Heaven Crystal grade creation item contained at least 3 times the creation power of a 3rd-grade creation item. What Long Yu was currently holding was the highest 2nd-grade creation item. Even in the batch of cultivation resources obtained from the army on the battlefield, there weren't many. Most importantly, those items didn't belong to Long Yu alone, but belonged to the forces of the entire Void Galaxy. Even if they were divided equally among everyone in the ancient foreign race ruins, Long Yu would only be able to obtain no more than 42nd-grade Heaven Crystal grade creation items. He was still very far away from raising the Devil Dust Heart to the 9th level. Chapter 1383. After Long Yu cultivated the Pure World body to the peak of the 9th level, he breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, there was one less thing that had been weighing on his heart. Then, he temporarily put Devil Dust's heart on hold. Instead, he prepared to deal with another matter. That was the matter with the Bone Race and the Vestigial Race. This matter had been dragged on for a long time. Long Yu should have gone to get the unbounded rank martial skill Jade Slip long ago. It was just that he hadn't done so yet. However, he wasn't worried that the other party wouldn't give it to him. After all, the Bone Race and the Vestigial Race relied on Long Yu's little world to survive. Regarding Long Yu's reasonable request, the other party wouldn't refuse. Moreover, he had been providing a lot of the world's spirit energy that had gathered in the little world of Dragon Defense recently to the Bone Race's Vestigial Race, allowing them to develop a little. At the very least, the Bone Race and the Vestigial Race below the ruler's secret realm could absorb this heaven and earth spiritual energy and improve slightly. They were no longer like before, only able to maintain the most basic of survival. This change made the 300,000 members of the Bone Race and the Vestigial Race overjoyed. However, it was precisely at this time that the current leader of the Bone Race, Yu Wufang, became more and more flustered. Because this was the opportunity for development that they had paid a huge price for. If they didn't have the unbounded rank martial skill Jade Slip, what would they do? Would Long Yu still allow them to eat and drink for free and continue living here? Obviously, he wouldn't. Even if he didn't exterminate them, he would drive them out or use them as laborers to do this and that in Long Yu's little world. Therefore, Yu Wufang was deeply worried about this. Recently, Long Yu hadn't appeared in front of them. However, This didn't mean that Long Yu had forgotten about them. Yu Wufang knew that what would come sooner or later. Therefore, when Long Yu entered his little world and came to the living area of the bone race, Yu Wufang was already prepared. He came alone to greet him. As a member of the bone race, Yu Wufang's entire body was made up of bones. He could only send out divine sense, but the divine sense he sent out was something that even Long Yu couldn't accept. This was because the biological difference between them was too great. Moreover, the Netherworld Void Dragon Blade wasn't here, so there was no way for Long Yu and Yu Wufang to communicate. Of course, Yu Wufang was very clear about Long Yu's intentions for coming here. So even if they couldn't communicate, it wouldn't hinder Long Yu from reaching his goal. After discovering that Long Yu didn't bring the Netherworld Void Dragon Blade, Yu Wufang gave up on communicating with Long Yu. He took out a jade slip he had prepared beforehand and threw it over to Long Yu. Long Yu caught it and looked at it. It was indeed a high-grade, unbounded rank martial skill that could only be cultivated by humans. It was called the Unbounded Grasp. He didn't know what effect it had, but as a high-grade, unbounded rank martial skill, it was on the same level as Warmonger's celestial body. If he could cultivate it to a higher level, it would definitely be very powerful. Unbounded rank martial skills were extremely precious resources, whether it was in the human race or the demon race. Even mid-grade or low-grade unbounded rank martial skills were extremely precious. In the army, only experts who had made outstanding contributions were qualified to obtain cultivation jade slips. In all of the human and demon territories, the number of cultivators who could cultivate unbounded rank martial skills was less than 1 in 100 billion. It should be noted that even Red Oriole, the princess of the Blood Demon clan, had never cultivated an unbounded level martial technique. Even the Dragon Emperor of the Nine Abyss had only cultivated one unbounded level martial technique. Of course, the unbounded rank martial skill that the Geo Dragon Emperor had cultivated couldn't be low-grade, mid-grade, or high-grade. It was more likely to be supreme grade or supreme grade. But now, it was impossible to verify. After all of the Geo Dragon Emperor's contemporaries were dead. As for the martial skill that the Geo Dragon Emperor had cultivated, there were no legacies left. No matter what martial skill it was, the most important thing was to be proficient in it. Otherwise, it would be useless no matter how much you cultivated. For example, Long Yu had learned a variety of skills, but when it came to a critical moment, there were only a few that could be used. I hope the Unbounded Grasp won't disappoint me, Long Yu thought to himself. Then, he took the jade slip and left the living area of the Bone Clan. He found a secluded spot in his minor world and prepared to spend the next 2 months researching the high-grade, unbounded rank martial skill, the Unbounded Grasp, and also cultivating the Devil Dust Heart. The spirit energy of heaven and earth that had been accumulating for more than a month was very abundant. If Long Yu cultivated the Devil Dust Heart, he would probably be able to advance 2 or 3 levels. As for the specifics, he would have to try it out. Long Yu first studied the jade slip of the Limitless Grasp and discovered that it was a control technique. Moreover, it seemed to be very useful. The Boundless Grasp is able to ignore the boundaries of space and directly grab the opponent to one side. It's similar to a telekinesis effect. If the opponent wants to escape, I can easily pull them back with this move. Long Yu looked at the introduction of the high-grade, Unbounded Grasp and realized that it was a technique for chasing and killing. However, it was obvious that there was more to it than that. When the Limitless Grasp was cultivated to the large success realm, once the opponent was captured, the flow of energy within the opponent's body would be sealed for a short period of time. When the power of the Unbounded Grasp was sealed, no matter what skills or techniques the opponent used, their speed would be reduced by at least 99%. In other words, during the short period of a few breaths, the opponent would be unable to fight back. Unless, of course, the opponent was like Long Yu and cultivated a high-level worldly purity body, or had a secret martial skill or martial skill with similar effects. If the Unbounded Grasp was cultivated to a higher level, it would have even stronger effects. In short, it was a very useful martial skill that consumed very little energy. There was absolutely no harm in cultivating it. With that thought in mind, Long Yu began to study the Unbounded Grasp Jade Slip. It was worth mentioning that the Unbounded Grasp didn't require a specific type of divine character to be used. No matter what type of power was used, the divine character would have its own effects. For example, Long Yu's compatibility with the Shadow-type divine character had reached the peak of the 12th level, and it naturally had a strong corrosive effect. As long as Long Yu used any Shadow-type divine character to use the Unbounded Grasp, it would have a corrosive effect, control, corrosion, weakening. All sorts of disgusting effects could make any opponent sick. Even if it was someone with combat strength similar to Long Yu, if they were caught off guard, it would be very uncomfortable. In fact, they might even be at a disadvantage and be killed by Long Yu. I can't see the later effects from the Jade Slip. I'll have to cultivate it first. Long Yu began to deeply understand this martial skill, and then began to comprehend and cultivate it. Time passed, and the Nether Void Dragon Blade soon returned to Long Yu's side. However, Long Yu didn't mind. He let Little Void play on its own. As for himself, he immersed himself in the cultivation of the Unbounded Grasp martial skill. He had learned many moves before, but very few of them had reached a higher level. That was because his cultivation was more mixed, and he wasn't proficient in any martial skill. Among them, the Battle Lunatic Celestial Body could only be comprehended in a real battle. Since Long Yu didn't have much opportunity to cultivate it, he could only let nature take its course. Apart from the Battle Lunatic Celestial Body, none of the other martial skills were unbounded martial skills. Therefore, Long Yu didn't have the time to spend on them. Only the space-severing Fatal Blow was left. Due to its unique characteristics, Long Yu would occasionally use it. As for the other martial skills, he rarely used them. In many battles, Long Yu only needed to use his innate mystiques, the Nether Void Dragon Blade, and the Ancient Dragon Bone Pagoda, which were two top-grade, unbounded combat weapons, and that was enough. Martial skills were rarely used before reaching a higher level of the Unbounded Grasp. Now that he had acquired a very useful high-grade, unbounded martial skill, the Unbounded Grasp, it was only natural that Long Yu would do his best to gain enlightenment from it. Furthermore, it wouldn't be as troublesome as Battle Heavenly Bodies. As long as he used this move in more battles, as long as his proficiency increased and he had enough comprehension, it would naturally continue to improve. It was much more convenient than the Battle Lunatic Celestial Body. In fact, Long Yu could even use the method he used in the Five Emperors Illusion Realm, and use the 1,000-layer illusions to quickly improve his martial skills. Of course, using this method to improve the Unbounded Grasp wouldn't be as heaven-defying, but it would still speed up Long Yu's cultivation of the move and allow Long Yu to comprehend it to a higher level. For the next 2 months, Long Yu did not do anything else. He spent all his time practicing the Limitless Grip. As for his first opponent, it was the Nether Void Dragon Blade. Long Yu was under a lot of pressure when he had Little Void fight him. After all, the Nether Void Dragon Blade was a special God-grade absolute beginning weapon. It was filled with water-type absolute beginning power. Furthermore, its void piercing and void burial techniques were terrifying. As for Long Yu, he only used the Path of the 9 Underworlds and the Unbounded Grasp martial skills. Among them, the Path of 9 Underworld divine ability could disintegrate all of the water element power released by the Nether Dragon Blade. Even though it couldn't completely disintegrate it, it could still weaken a lot of the power of the Nether Burial technique so that he wouldn't be in life-threatening danger. When Long Yu first learned the Unbounded Grasp and used it against the Nether Void Dragon Blade, it had basically no effect, and he couldn't pull her over. But when Long Yu improved the Unbounded Grasp to minor success, the results finally showed. Chapter 1384. Long Yu's Boundless Grasp, which had reached the Minor Mastery realm, could directly pull the Nether Void Dragon Blade over from afar and cause it to enter a state where its power was sealed. This state was effective against the Nether Void Dragon Blade, let alone against other cultivators. Although it was only a breath's time, in a battle at Long Yu's level, a breath's time was enough for him to do many things, and it was enough to determine his victory in the battle. In the first 7 days, Long Yu had been fighting the Nether Void Dragonblade. Although the Nether Void Dragonblade wasn't a cultivator and was only at the Divine Grade Absolute beginning level, it was still able to improve Long Yu a little. At this moment, Long Yu felt that it was a pity. If the White Feather Beast clan's Quasi-Heavenly Lightning was still in his little world, he would be able to exchange pointers with Quasi-Heavenly Lightning. After all, Quasi-Heavenly Lightning was in existence in the Sovereign Realm. Moreover, Heavenly Thunder was at the 3rd stage Great Dominator Realm, and his overall strength shouldn't be much stronger than Long Yu's. Sparring with him would be very effective. Only with pressure would there be progress. Now that Long Yu was fighting the Nether Void Dragonblade, on one hand, she wasn't a cultivator, and on the other, she and Long Yu were mentally connected. Wherever the Nether Void Dragonblade wanted to go, Long Yu would be able to prepare in advance, and vice versa, so there was no point in fighting like this, and this kind of mental connection couldn't be blocked. When Long Yu and the Nether Void Dragonblade reached the unparalleled level, and when the Nether Void Dragonblade gave birth to the spiritual sense Little Void, it was destined that Long Yu and her could no longer be separated. After a week of sparring, Long Yu had cultivated the limitless grasp to the small success level, and was able to accurately deal with Little Void. Every time he used the limitless grasp, the Nether Void Dragonblade would be grabbed by him, and then its power would be sealed, unable to escape. Moreover, when the Nether Void Dragonblade used Void Burial on Long Yu, it would be directly disintegrated by Long Yu's path of 9 underworlds, which made the Nether Void Dragonblade very puzzled. I'm done. You want to practice martial arts, but since there isn't an opponent on the same level as you, why don't you suppress your cultivation and find someone in your small world to spar with? It's just to practice martial arts proficiency. It has nothing to do with your martial Dao realm. Little Void Dragon Void was bullied to the end and finally proposed an idea. This thought made Long Yu's eyes light up. However, if it was just to practice martial arts, why did he have to find an opponent who was on the same level as him? Since there were no opponents on the same level as him in the small world, he would suppress his cultivation to the same level as his opponent and then fight with his opponent. Such a simple logic. Long Yu had never thought of it before. The key was that he had always been advancing towards a higher realm of martial arts and had never looked back to the past. Now that the idea of the Netherworld Void Dragonblade popped up, Long Yu was reminded of something. Although it was important to blindly move forward, if it was to cultivate a martial skill, there was no need to look for an evenly matched opponent. Since that was the case, Long Yu finally had a better way to cultivate the limitless grasp. Thank you, Little Void Dragon Void. In this case, I'll suppress my cultivation to the Emperor Path's secret realm and find an opponent in the new martial world. Long Yu laughed heartily. It had been a long time since he felt this way. He didn't expect that it was inspired by his battle weapon. But now, to Long Yu, the Void Spirit Dragonblade and Little Void were definitely not as simple as his battle weapons. He had already seen her as his friend, an extremely close friend, the kind of friend who could go through thick and thin with him, through thick and thin. Go, I'll guard outside for you. Little Void was also very happy that she could think of a way for Long Yu. But in this situation, she couldn't follow Long Yu back to the new martial world. Because Long Yu might need a long time to practice, Little Void had to guard against other dangers for Long Yu in the Double Star Turbulence. Now, although the power in the center of the Double Star Turbulence was calm and stable, it might become chaotic at any time. And what Long Yu left outside was only the 9 Underworlds tablet. Once the 9 Underworlds tablet was stimulated and exploded, the situation would be very bad. Therefore, Nether Void Dragonblade stayed outside to keep watch. Because she was connected with Long Yu's mind, as long as something happened outside, Long Yu would know immediately. This was very convenient. Of course, the mental connection between Long Yu and Nether Void Dragonblade was also limited by distance. If they were too far apart, they still wouldn't be able to clearly sense each other's thoughts. For example, when Nether Void Dragonblade left the Double Star Turbulence and went near the Dragon and Phoenix stars to deliver a message to Red Oriole and Moon Song, Long Yu couldn't really sense Nether Void Dragonblade's existence at that time. However, When Long Yu was in his own small world and the Netherworld Dragon Blade was outside, it was too easy for them to sense each other's presence in such a situation. Just like that, Long Yu had little Void stand guard outside, while he himself returned to his own little world and descended into the new martial world. If I remember correctly, there are quite a few familiar faces in this new martial world. I haven't seen some of them for a long time, so it's quite interesting for them to come back and train. Long Yu thought to himself. Of course, he wouldn't appear with his original appearance. If he did, everyone in the new martial world would know that the entire world belonged to him. Who would want to spar with him? He disguised himself as a tall and thin young man, still wearing a black short-sleeved shirt. Without alerting anyone, he returned to the new martial world. The new martial world was a new world that Red Oriole had modeled after the Divine Battle World. Its territory was so vast that it even surpassed the original Divine Battle World, but it was missing 108,000 floating islands. In the new martial world, there were still organizations like the Tianqin Dynasty, the North Snow Dynasty, and the Holy City of the Five Emperors, which used to be in the Netherworld realm. However, the original 6 sects and 10 kingdoms had changed a little. These changes were natural and had nothing to do with Long Yu. Long Yu couldn't be bothered to think about these things. The organization changes in the new martial world had no effect on Long Yu. After all, they were no longer on the same level. All he needed to know was that he had to suppress his cultivation to a certain level and find some suitable opponents. In the new martial world, the strongest is the current Cloud Emperor, who has reached the level of the 3-star Emperor. Others who can reach the level of Emperor are rare. Most of them are in the King Realm, Emperor Realm, and Emperor Realm. Long Yu pondered in his heart. He was thinking about which level of cultivation he should suppress. Below the King Path Secret Realm, the Divine Ability Secret Realm didn't even have a complete set of 7 mystic abilities. Long Yu definitely wouldn't consider finding someone too weak as an opponent. In that case, I'll suppress my cultivation to the King Realm. Long Yu recalled that a long time ago, he had participated in the strongest King Realm competition, as well as the strongest Emperor Realm competition. This kind of competition was quite intense, and it could also achieve the effect of training his martial skills. As for the illusion world of the 5 Emperors, it still existed. It was created by Red Oriole, but it wouldn't be of much help to Long Yu's cultivation of high-grade, unending realm martial skills. With a shake of his body, Long Yu's cultivation was suppressed to the King Path Secret Realm. His basic strength dropped by more than 1,000 times, and he wasn't used to it. From the King Realm to the Emperor Realm, then the Emperor Realm, and then the 7-star Emperor's Secret Realm to the Sovereign Realm, there were more than 10 minor realms. Each minor realm would increase one's basic strength by 2 or 3 times. Long Yu couldn't get used to suppressing his strength to the early King Realm all of a sudden. It was like an ordinary person who could lift a boulder but suddenly became crippled. He couldn't even pick up a small pebble. It was a very similar feeling. It was precisely because of this that Long Yu had not thought of such a method in the beginning. It was simply too unpleasant. In a situation where all of his power was suppressed, Long Yu felt as if he was a cripple. In fact, it wasn't that serious. It was just that the drop in strength was a very stifling feeling. Moreover, he had suppressed his cultivation base to that of an early-stage King Realm ruler. The difference in cultivation base was simply too great. Most people probably wouldn't be able to do this. This made Long Yu think of the Heavenly Prison Thunder Emperor. The last time he saw the Heavenly Prison Thunder Emperor on the battlefield of the Ice God clan, he was already a great sovereign realm expert. Long Yu had reason to believe that the Heavenly Prison Thunder Emperor, who was still in the 9 Serenities realm, was not only in the Emperor realm, but also in the Great Sovereign realm. Therefore, when the Heavenly Prison Thunder Emperor was in the 9 Serenities realm, he must have suppressed his cultivation. Because of this, Long Yu couldn't hurt the Heavenly Prison Thunder Emperor in the battle of the strongest Emperor realm. Because the Heavenly Prison Thunder Emperor's cultivation was suppressed, his physical body was still in the Sovereign Secret Realm, or even the Great Sovereign Realm. Does the Ascetic Walker Alliance use this method to train themselves? When Long Yu thought of this, he was a little puzzled. The Bitter Cultivators Alliance was really strange. However, to be honest, there were times when training in such a way would have a miraculous effect on certain things. At the very least, Long Yu recalled that when he had fought against the Sky Prison Thunder Emperor, he had definitely benefited the Sky Prison Thunder Emperor greatly. After all, Long Yu had been able to force the Sky Prison Thunder Emperor, who had suppressed his cultivation base, to be defeated. This was not something that ordinary people could do. Under great pressure, cultivators would often be able to unleash their full potential. The Heavenly Prison Thunder Emperor might have improved a lot after the battle of the strongest Emperor realm. It was just that Long Yu didn't know. I'll get used to my current strength first. Then I'll start looking for people to fight. The Boundless Grasp is a high-grade, unending level martial skill. It's a bit of a bully in the new martial world. Long Yu thought like this in his heart, but did not have the slightest bit of hesitation and directly set off to look for them. Chapter 1385. Long Yu returned to the new martial world and suppressed his cultivation to the early stage of the King realm. Then, he walked around the North Snow Empire. After all, he was quite familiar with the North Snow Empire. It was a good place to start his journey. Of course, the current North Snow Empire was not in a remote part of the new martial world, but in the sky above the holy city of the Five Emperors. It was in the center of the entire new martial world. To the North Snow Empire, this was an extremely good condition for development. It was just as Long Yu had seen. The current North Snow Empire had already become an existence that surpassed worldly countries. The conditions for cultivation were excellent. The population was flourishing, and geniuses were everywhere. The overall strength had even surpassed the 6 sects and 10 countries. In the current new martial world, apart from the holy city of the Five Emperors, the North Snow Empire had already become another holy land for cultivation. Everyone yearned to come here to cultivate. Unfortunately, the conditions to enter the North Snow Empire were not low. Foreign cultivators had to at least reach the King Path Secret Realm to be qualified to enter the North Snow Empire. After all, the North Snow Empire's position was special. It was impossible for everyone to come and go as they pleased. Right now, if Long Yu wanted to enter the North Snow Empire, it would be a very easy thing. No one would be able to find out, and he would be able to sneak in easily. However, this was not what he wanted. His main purpose in coming to the new martial world was to gain experience. As for the qualification test to enter the North Snow Empire, it was quite a good training for him. He needed to go through 3 consecutive trials. Only by passing the 3 trials would he have the right to enter the North Snow Empire. The number of people who signed up to participate in the qualification test of the North Snow Empire was like a school of carps in the river. The tall and skinny young man that Long Yu had transformed into his queuing at the back. However, there were also many people from the North Snow Empire who came to take the test, so he did not have to queue for long. After about 6 hours, it was Long Yu's turn. Someone came over and brought Long Yu to an independent space. Name, Mountain Ghost. Martial Path Realm. Early Stage King Realm. You need to go through 3 battles in a row to be qualified to enter the North Snow Empire. The examiner said expressionlessly. He then asked Long Yu to head to the center of the independent space and prepare for battle. The person in charge of the examination was only at the intermediate stage of the King Realm, but he could tell that this fellow was most likely a native cultivator of the North Snow Empire, which was why he could be the person in charge of the examination. There was no way to stop this situation. After all, the North Snow Empire was such a large place. When the entire North Snow Empire rose up, there would definitely be some people who would use various methods to allow the people around them to live better lives so that they could obtain even more cultivation resources. The reward for the person in charge of the assessment should be quite high, but all of this had nothing to do with Long Yu. He could easily decide how the North Snow Empire would develop in the future, but this should not be up to him to decide. He only needed to properly train himself. Long Yu nodded and walked to the center of the stage, preparing for the first battle without any pressure in his heart. This caused many of the examiners in the surroundings to be slightly curious. They'd seen too many people that had come to take the test, and it was very natural for some advanced stage King Realm geniuses to be unnervous. However, this kid that was only at the initial stage of the King Realm was actually so composed. Is his mental state really that good? Or could it be that this kid was confident that he could pass the assessment and enter the North Snow Empire? Many people shook their heads. Although the basic requirement for the assessment of the North Snow Empire was to be at the initial stage of the King Realm, whether an early-stage King Realm cultivator could pass the assessment was another matter. Simply put, it was extremely difficult for an early-stage King Realm cultivator to pass the assessment and enter the North Snow Empire. Long Yu only waited for a while before he saw a young swordsman in a white robe walk in front of him and cast a haughty glance at Long Yu. This person should be from the North Snow Empire. He was very young, probably in his 20s. Being able to reach the initial stage King Realm, he was indeed not weak. The tall and skinny young man that Long Yu had transformed into seemed to be in his 30s, and he looked quite similar to the other people that had come to participate in the assessment of the North Snow Empire. This naturally made the young man in front of him feel arrogant. Quickly make your move. After I finish you, there will be another one. My mission today is to defeat 10 people, and then I can report back. The young man cast a contemptuous glance at Long Yu and spoke arrogantly. He did not even take out the long sword hanging on his waist. Many people around cast envious glances at the young man. Obviously, this young man's identity was not ordinary. Being able to enter the King Path secret realm before the age of 20 was considered quite good in the current Northern Snow Empire. However, Long Yu did not care about the young man's appearance at all, nor did he care about what the people around him thought. He only smiled faintly and said, "I hope you will not disappoint me." After saying this, he raised his hand, and Jiu divine characters rapidly emerged from the tip of his finger. They quickly condensed into a Jiu hand in midair, and the white bone arm pierced through the void, directly grabbing at the young man. It was a simple innate magic skill. Long Yu did not use any fancy moves, because in his eyes, the young man was too weak. Under the circumstances that Long Yu had suppressed his cultivation level, it was impossible for someone of the same cultivation level as him to be a match for him. Long Yu had come here to participate in the assessment, not for the first battle, but for the third battle. So, he could not spend too much time on the first battle. When Long Yu executed the Jiu hand, the young man immediately seemed as if he was facing a formidable enemy, because he could sense the formidable power contained in the white bone arm. Long Yu had already merged with the Shadow Attribute Divine characters to the 12th level, so any technique that he executed with the Jiu Divine characters would carry a natural corrosive force. Besides that, Long Yu's magic skill was already an Emperor magic skill, and the increase in its power was far beyond the imagination of cultivators at the Beginner King stage. Even though Long Yu had suppressed his cultivation level to the Beginner King stage, a mere Beginner King stage opponent still could not threaten him. As soon as the Jiu hand was executed, the atmosphere in the surroundings had changed completely. Everyone had solemn expressions on their faces, and even the expression of the person in charge of the assessment at the intermediate stage of the King stage had changed drastically, because he sensed the might contained within this attack, and it was something he was completely unable to resist. In this way, there was no need to mention the young man at the Beginner King stage. However, the young man gritted his teeth and decided to give a try. After all, he was a genius, so how could he possibly flee without putting up a fight? Rock Pillar. The young man raised his hand and released an ancient combat weapon. This ancient combat weapon was his final trump card, and it could be considered as a very good combat weapon even in the North Snow Empire. Now that he was facing Long Yu's Jiu hand, this fellow directly utilized his trump card. A crystalline rock pillar suddenly enlarged, and it forcefully blocked the young man's path before sweeping towards the Jiu hand. The rock pillar arrived with a loud bang and collided with the Jiu hand. Long Yu had already comprehended 60% of the revelation-grade divine text of Jiu hand, and it directly corroded the Jiu hand. In almost an instant, the corrosive power of the divine text of Jiu hand had completely destroyed the rock pillar. Moreover, the Jiu hand continued moving forward, and without any hesitation, it grabbed the young man and threw him into the distance. Next, Long Yu watched the young man fall to the ground and faint, so he did not pay any more attention to him. Instead, he indifferently reminded the person in charge of the assessment behind him. The situation had changed too quickly. Only now did the person in charge of the assessment, as well as the surrounding spectators, react. In the blink of an eye, the genius of the North Snow Empire that they were so proud of had been defeated in a single move by someone. It should be known that this young man was definitely not a weakling. At the beginner king stage, he could already hang on and beat up most of his opponents. However, now that he had encountered this tall and skinny young man, he was actually unable to withstand a single move. Furthermore, even the ancient combat weapon, the stony crystal pillar, was destroyed. This was unbelievable. To the surrounding onlookers, this battle was too shocking. How to deal with Long Yu had already become a very big problem. However, to Long Yu, this was just a small fight. He knew that he would cause some commotion, but he did not expect that the young man he had defeated would have some background. This matter would probably not end so easily. In the second battle, a middle-aged man in the intermediate king stage stepped up. The assessment of the North Snow Empire did not require the participants to win all 3 battles consecutively. Instead, it was to let the person in charge of the assessment see the performance of the participants. After all, the participants of the assessment were all relatively strong existences in the North Snow Empire. Moreover, the second battle was against a middle-stage king stage, while the third battle was against a late-stage king stage. For ordinary cultivators, it was impossible for them to be defeated. Therefore, whether one could join the North Snow Empire or not depended entirely on the subjective evaluation of the participants by the person in charge of the assessment. Even if some people lost, as long as the person in charge of the assessment gave them a high evaluation, they could still join the North Snow Empire. On the contrary, even if some people defeated their opponents, as long as the person in charge of the assessment rejected them, they would not be qualified to join the North Snow Empire. Because of this, the person in charge of the assessment had such great power, which made many people envious. Only those who had connections could become the person in charge of the assessment. Be careful. The middle-aged man in the second battle was in the intermediate king stage. He looked at Long Yu with a solemn expression and was very nervous. Although his martial arts realm was 1 level higher than Long Yu's hand of 9 serenities just now was already very powerful. He imagined that if he was in Long Yu's position, it would also be extremely difficult for him to resist this move of Long Yu. However, fleeing without fighting was not his style. Therefore, when he encountered an expert, he also hoped that he could gain some benefits from this battle, whether it be experience or enlightenment. After all, he was a middle-aged man, not as aggressive as the young man just now. His character and behavior were much more mature. At least, Long Yu did not have any bad feelings towards him. Chapter 1386. However, even though he didn't feel any ill will towards the middle-aged man, Long Yu wouldn't show any mercy. After all, his opponent wasn't the middle-aged man. The middle stage of the king realm was still too weak for Long Yu. Divine ability, Hand of 9 Hell. Long Yu raised his hand, and the revelation-grade divine characters of 9 Hell continued to condense into a skeletal arm that tore through the sky and directly grabbed the middle-aged man. However, at this moment, Long Yu noticed a problem. Because he'd suppressed his cultivation, the total amount of energy in his body wasn't much. After using the Hand of 9 Hell twice, the energy in his body actually seemed to be on the verge of drying up. In that case, it's better not to use the revelation-grade divine characters of 9 Hell. After all, if I suppress my cultivation, I won't be able to bear the consumption of the revelation-grade divine characters. Long Yu thought in his heart. He'd also improved all the way from the King Path Secret Realm, so he naturally knew how to save the energy in his body to the greatest extent. The Hand of 9 Hell tore through the sky with an unparalleled ghastly aura, and it pressed down towards the middle-aged man like a mountain. The middle-aged man had expected that Long Yu would use the same method, so he prepared himself. He gritted his teeth and stared at the ghastly aura coming from the hand of Nine Hell. Suddenly, his entire body seemed as if it was covered in gold, and it continued to grow larger. After a short while, the middle-aged man had actually become a golden giant. He was over 30 meters tall, over 10 times taller than an ordinary person. Standing before Long Yu, he made Long Yu look like a small stone. The golden giant roared furiously, and his entire body shone with golden light. The power of the divine characters of light covered his entire body, and he actually resisted the ghastly aura of Long Yu's hand of Nine Hell. However, just resisting the aura was already so difficult. When the hand of Nine Hell descended for real, the golden giant would probably be unable to endure it. The golden giant that the middle-aged man had transformed into roared furiously, and each roar was louder than the previous one. It ceaselessly blasted the ghastly aura brought by the hand of Nine Hell back, and in the end, it was finally defeated. This caused many onlookers in the surroundings to cheer in succession. However, in the next moment, the hand of 9 underworlds had already descended upon the head of the golden giant. The hand pressed down and directly grabbed the golden giant's shoulder. The power of the revelation grade, 9 nether characters instantly eroded the golden giant's body. The terrifying corrosive power caused the golden giant's shoulder to lose feeling, and it was quickly destroyed. This situation caused the golden giant's expression to darken, but he calmly took out a large sword. As the sword danced through the air, it brought with it a boundless presence and the power of the divine runes of light, and it slashed down heavily on the Nine Hell's hand that was holding onto the giant's shoulder. A powerful force erupted, and the hand of Nine Gloom was chopped down by a large sword. However, it was not directly sliced into pieces. Instead, it trembled slightly before continuing to corrode the golden giant's shoulder. The golden radiant divine characters on its shoulder were constantly being eroded by the revelation-level divine characters of the 9 nether. Soon, the entire left shoulder of the golden giant was in ruins, as if it had been soaked in a pool of venom. Fortunately, the damage to the golden giant's left shoulder did not affect the middle-aged man's body. The middle-aged man's body did not transform into a golden giant. The entire golden giant was condensed from golden radiant divine characters, and the middle-aged man's body was located at the heart of the golden giant's chest. This was equivalent to the middle-aged man condensing a golden giant with the power of his own golden radiant divine characters, and then controlling it from the heart. This kind of combat method was considered novel to Long Yu, as he had never seen it before. If one had enough power to support it, it would probably be considered a relatively powerful method. After all, while maintaining one's defense, one would also have an extremely powerful attack. However, the middle-aged man's martial arts realm was too low. His cultivation base was only at the mid-king level, and there was no room for him to resist or struggle in front of Long Yu. Dragon Breath of the 9 Underworlds. Long Yu turned around and spat out the dragon breath of the 9 nether. Although he did not use the revelation-level divine characters of the 9 nether, its power was still extremely tyrannical. At the very least, its direct destructive power was much more tyrannical than the hand of 9 Gloom. Long Yu spat out the black flames of the dragon breath of the 9 nether. The middle-aged man was not annoying, and Long Yu did not attack the man's vital parts. He only blasted the Juyo Dragon Emperor at the legs of the golden giant. The flames of the dragon breath arrived with a loud bang, and the pitch-black flames instantly erupted at the legs of the golden giant. The tyrannical destructive power instantly blasted the legs of the golden giant into pieces. When the legs exploded, the entire golden giant no longer had the power to fight, and it collapsed to the ground. It was not that the golden giant could not fly, but that its legs affected the balance of its huge body. Now that its legs were suddenly blasted into pieces, the golden giant could not maintain its balance, and it collapsed with a loud bang. The middle-aged man's figure suddenly leapt up from the golden giant's chest. He caught the golden greatsword and slashed at Long Yu with the greatsword in his hand. The middle-aged man had even trained in a desolate grade sword technique. At that very moment, countless sword images appeared in the air after he held the large sword in his hand. Then, they swept towards Long Yu Xuan, unleashing a barrage of ferocious sword chi attacks. However, with the current strength of Long Yu's physical body, the sword chi attack launched by the middle-aged man did not pose a threat to Long Yu at all. Relying on the strength of his physical body, Long Yu raised his hand and finally used the high-grade, unbounded level martial technique that he had just cultivated, the boundless grasp. This was the biggest reason he came to the new martial world to train, to cultivate the boundless grasp to a higher level. The endless power of the Nine Serenity's divine characters instantly condensed into an illusory hand seal, which appeared next to the middle-aged man, and then the hand seal grasped the middle-aged man. "Come here!" With a shout from Long Yu, the middle-aged man and his greatsword were instantly pulled to the front of Long Yu by the boundless grasp. At the same time, all the power in the middle-aged man's body was temporarily sealed, and he could not use any skills. Now in front of Long Yu, the middle-aged man was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, unable to resist at all. None of the people present had seen such a powerful martial technique like the boundless grasp. At this moment, the middle-aged man was directly pulled over by Long Yu with a wave of his hand. It was as if he'd been instantly teleported, but no one present sensed any fluctuations of energy from the spatial divine runes. Berserker Fist Cannon. Long Yu raised his hand, raised his fist, and punched at the middle-aged man who had been completely restrained. Because Long Yu had suppressed his own cultivation, he was not worried that this little bit of power would be enough to kill his opponent with a single punch. With a single punch, the middle-aged man's chest received a heavy blow. His entire body was sent flying and fell heavily to the ground. His ending was not much better than the first young man. In the second battle, Long Yu won easily. However, it was obvious that the middle stage of the King Realm was much stronger than the early stage of the King Realm. In the next battle, Long Yu should be able to use his true strength against the late stage of the King Realm. After all, in order to conserve energy, Long Yu couldn't use the revelation divine characters of the Nine Serenities every time. Therefore, the power of the Nine Serenities' divine characters would be greatly reduced, and his ability to challenge those with higher cultivation levels would be greatly reduced. If he went all out, the current Long Yu could definitely kill an early Emperor Realm cultivator in an instant. But doing so would exhaust all of Long Yu's strength, so there was no need to do so. Therefore, it was enough for him to pick a suitable opponent and practice the boundless grasp. For Long Yu, it would be best if he could improve the boundless grasp by 2 levels in the next month or so. That way, he would achieve his goal of returning to the new martial world. The middle-aged man was utterly defeated by Long Yu once again. This situation caused the surrounding spectators to be dumbfounded. They often came here to observe the entrance examination battles of a Northern Snow Empire, but they had never seen anyone who could defeat 2 opponents in a row and with such ease. Ordinary cultivators would find it difficult to win even the first battle. Most of them would be defeated by the cultivators of the Northern Snow Empire. Then, the examiners would judge their performance and give them a score. Those with a score that met the requirements would be able to enter the Northern Snow Empire to train. But now, this tall and thin young man had defeated 2 opponents with ease. It was obvious that his talent was far beyond that of an ordinary person. What would the third battle be like? "I'll be your opponent." Very soon, a cold and determined voice rang out from the side. This voice caused everyone to rejoice. They hurriedly looked over and discovered that the genius had indeed appeared. According to the rules of the Northern Snow Empire's entrance examination, the first opponent of the examinee would be a cultivator of the same cultivation level as the examinee. The second opponent would be 1 level higher in the martial Dao realm, and the third opponent would be a different story. But now, the person who stood out to fight Long Yu was actually an early Emperor Realm young man. An early Emperor Realm cultivator had already stepped into the Emperor Realm. The situation was completely different from a King Realm cultivator. If it's Sikong Yi, then there's no way this kid can win. Let's see how long he can last against Seekong. That's right. Putting aside the huge gap between the King Realm and the Emperor Realm, Seekong is a super genius of our Northern Snow Empire's Ruoshui commandery. He once defeated a mid-stage Emperor Realm opponent. He's extremely powerful. A good show is about to begin. It looks like this guy has challenged two of our Northern Snow Empire's geniuses in a row. He's too arrogant. We need someone to control the situation. Otherwise, wouldn't our Northern Snow Empire lose all face? As the crowd discussed animatedly, Long Yu narrowed his eyes and glanced at the newcomer. Seekong, it's actually this kid. Isn't this the genius of Ruoshui commandery? It's Duke Ruoshui's nephew. Long Yu also recalled that during the North Snow Empire's Imperial Capital Grand Meet, Seekong Yi's cultivation was only at the 7 Daos Transcendent Realm, and he seemed to have suffered serious injuries during the battle. What he cultivated was the Ice attribute Divine Text. Who would have thought that he'd already stepped into the early stage Emperor Realm and become a genius of the Northern Snow Empire? It had been a long time since Long Yu had left the Northern Snow Empire. After all, not everyone could step into the Sovereign's secret realm in such a short time like Long Yu. Seekong Yi's speed of advancing to the Emperor Realm was already pretty good. After all, the Northern Snow Empire's Ruoshui commandery wasn't the core of the Northern Snow Empire, and the cultivation resources there weren't particularly abundant. Chapter 1387. No matter what, Long Yu had finally met someone who could fight. Moreover, an initial Emperor Realm cultivation was very suitable for Long Yu. However, this was a bit out of Long Yu's expectations. He had thought that his next opponent would be a late-stage King Realm cultivator. Therefore, Long Yu decided to go all out when he saw Seekong Yi. He could temporarily refrain from using the revelation ranked divine characters of the Nine Nether, but he had to use his other techniques if he could. However, since it was Seekong, he might be able to see something from the battle. After all, Long Yu's divine characters of the Nine Nether were very recognizable in the Northern Snow Empire. His opponent might be able to tell that he was related to Long Yu, but they definitely wouldn't know that he was Long Yu. Long Yu didn't think too much about it. He watched as Seekong calmly walked into the arena. The aura of the divine characters of ice emanated from his body, causing the surrounding temperature to plummet. Long Yu's calm demeanor caused Seekong Yi's expression to turn solemn. The fact that Seekong Yi was able to remain unfazed by his initial Emperor Realm cultivation and was still calm enough to prepare for battle made Seekong Yi certain that the person in front of him was extremely powerful. Of course, this could already be seen from the previous two battles. If you can defeat me, I will recommend you to Empress North Snow. Seekong Yi said solemnly. Haha, let's begin. Long Yu shook his head and smiled coolly. He raised his hand and unleashed the divine characters of Berserker. Berserker's Fist Cannon. Long Yu raised his fist and shot towards Seekong Yi like a cannonball. The aura of the divine characters of Berserker descended from the sky and enveloped Seekong Yi. Divine ability, Ice Coffin Bind. Seekong Yi didn't hesitate. Boundless divine characters of ice spread out from his hand and quickly formed an ice coffin that enveloped Long Yu's entire body. The boundless power of Icebound Long Yu. Long Yu's Berserker Fist Cannon landed on the ice coffin, but failed to penetrate it. The difference in their martial Dao realms was quite a few levels, and the difference in their basic strength was quite large. Furthermore, Seekong Yi was a genius that could challenge those of a higher level. Although it was just an ordinary innate ability, it wasn't something that Long Yu could casually destroy. Berserker Fist Cannon. However, Long Yu wasn't in a hurry to break out of the ice coffin shackles. Instead, the corners of his lips curled up as he continued to unleash his Berserker Fist Cannon at the ice coffin. Punch after punch, the Berserker Fist Cannon on his body continued to accumulate. With each layer of Berserker's heavenly power superimposed, the might of Long Yu's Berserker's divine runes doubled. When Long Yu punched out for the 5th time, cracks began to appear on the ice coffin that bound him. With the 6th punch, the entire ice dragon shattered with a loud bang. Long Yu broke through the air and continued to swing his fist towards Seekong Yi's location. Although Long Yu only took 3 breaths to break the ice coffin, Seekong Yi had already prepared a big move during this time. Long Yu's charge towards him was exactly what he wanted. Boundless divine characters of ice suddenly surged out from all directions and condensed into clusters of ice shards that instantly surrounded Long Yu. Ice Burial. Seekong Yi quickly retreated as the surrounding divine characters of ice trapped Long Yu. Countless ice shards burrowed into Long Yu's body and bound him in midair. At the same time, the boundless cold energy tried to corrode his body. This move was a 3rd-grade divine formation that Seekong Yi had prepared for a long time. Coupled with the fact that his affinity with the divine characters of ice had reached a rather high level, its power was extremely terrifying. When used against an initial stage Emperor Realm opponent, his opponent would basically lose as long as he had the time to execute this move. Even against a mid-stage Emperor Realm cultivator, Seekong Yi could still rely on this move to secure victory. After all, when affected by the ice burial, a vortex of cold energy would appear within the opponent's body. This would slow down the opponent's execution speed and reduce their reaction speed. In short, it would bring about all sorts of disgusting negative effects. Unfortunately, his opponent was Long Yu. Since it's this kind of move, don't blame me for being impolite. Long Yu narrowed his eyes and raised his hand. The power of the world-cleansing physique condensed in his body and instantly formed a world-cleansing soul mirror that enveloped his entire body. When the power of the ice burial in the surroundings came into contact with the world-cleansing soul mirror, it instantly changed targets and was reflected back 10 times. Seekong, he didn't even have time to react before he felt a wave of coldness wash over him. The terrifying power of the ice burial was actually surging towards him. The world-cleansing soul mirror's ability to reflect mental attacks 10 times or all sorts of control techniques was just right for a situation like this. How could Seekong Yi have imagined that Long Yu would have such a move? If Long Yu had been trapped by the ice burial, then victory would have been his. Unfortunately, Long Yu wasn't so easily trapped. Instead, the ice burial's power was reflected back 10 times. Fortunately, Seekong Yi had a very good understanding of the ice burial. Even if the ice burial's power was amplified 10 times, he still wouldn't be completely trapped. The divine characters of ice burial blossomed as Seekong Yi's entire body broke through the surging power of the ice burial like a sharp sword of ice. In a battle between 2 sides, the situation would be completely reversed if the opponent seized an opportunity. For example, using the ice burial to deal with Long Yu was Seekong Yi's biggest mistake. Although he could still escape after being reflected 10 times, he was already at a complete disadvantage. Seekong Yi had just escaped from the ice burial when Long Yu used the Boundless Grasp. Using the Netherworld Divine Runes to execute the Boundless Grasp, Seekong Yi was pulled to the front of Long Yu and the power within his body was temporarily sealed. Berserker Fist Cannon. Long Yu had just layered several layers of Berserker Fist Cannon, which was still effective. The Berserker Fist Cannon, which was several times stronger, blasted Seekong Yi away. Fortunately, Seekong Yi's reaction was considered fast. When Long Yu executed the Boundless Grasp, he had already condensed a layer of ice armor on his body. This punch didn't cause much damage to him. After all, Long Yu's cultivation was only at the initial stage of the Immortal King realm. After suppressing his cultivation, his basic strength was only this little. It was impossible for him to kill Seekong Yi with a single punch. However, Long Yu's offensive wasn't over yet. After sending Seekong Yi flying with a single punch, Long Yu didn't show any mercy. He continued to execute the Boundless Grasp and pulled Seekong Yi back again. Then he punched again, 3 Boundless Grasps and 3 Berserker Fist Cannons. With the Berserker Fist Cannon layered on top of each other, Long Yu's punches became heavier and heavier. Even though Seekong Yi's entire body was protected by the ice armor, Long Yu still managed to shatter the ice armor on the third punch. These two moves were repeated over and over again. It really made Seikong Yi's heart ache. A dignified initial stage Emperor Realm genius was actually being played around by a mere initial stage King Realm brat. He really didn't have any face left. The boundless grasp was especially disgusting. After being pulled back, the power in his body was sealed. He couldn't run even if he wanted to. He could only forcefully endure long, using increasingly heavy berserker fist cannons. After 3 punches, not only did Seikong Yi's ice armor shatter, even his physical body had suffered considerable damage. However, after 3 times, Seikong Yi had developed a slight immunity to the boundless grasp. When Long Yu pulled him back for the 4th time, he instantly broke through the seal with the power of the Ice Divine Script. Then, he executed a natural ability towards Long Yu at close range. Ice Sword Cold Edge. This was a purely offensive technique similar to the Dragon Breath of the 9 Underworlds. The surging power of the Ice Divine Script condensed into an ice sword and stabbed towards Long Yu's chest. Even though Long Yu was able to react in time, there was no way he could dodge at such a close distance. He could only take the attack head-on. The ice sword's cold edge pierced through the air and stabbed into Long Yu's chest. Long Yu had suppressed his cultivation to the initial stage King Realm, so his physical strength had been weakened. He was injured in the end. Blood flowed out his chest, but it wasn't a big deal. Devil Dust Heart, regenerate. With a single thought, Long Yu's second heart thumped loudly. The powerful regenerative ability allowed his injuries to recover at a rapid pace. The ice sword's cold edge piercing Long Yu's chest was shattered by Long Yu's 9 Underworlds Divine Script. Then, the Berserker Divine Script burst forth from his body once more. At this moment, he had stacked 10 layers of Berserker's momentum, increasing the power of his Berserker Divine Script tenfold. Not only that, the Berserker Fist had been stagnant at its peak for a long time, but after a series of fierce battles, it had finally made a critical breakthrough. The high-grade, unbounded martial skill, Berserker Fist, had finally reached the consummate level. Berserker Divine Walk. After cultivating Berserker Fist to the consummate level, it actually derived a movement skill. Long Yu was a little surprised. But now wasn't the time to be surprised. Since he had derived Berserker Divine Walk, he might as well give it a try. With a thought, Long Yu's Berserker Divine Script instantly condensed around his body. In the blink of an eye, his figure flashed 10 zhang away, moving as fast as lightning. Before Seikong Yi could react, Long Yu's boundless grasp arrived and grabbed him. Then, he followed up with another Berserker Fist Cannon. Now that Berserker Fist Cannon had broken through to the consummate level, the power of his Berserker Fist Cannon had tripled. This punch directly smashed Seikong Yi to the ground, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Ice Divine Script condensed behind Long Yu. Then, Long Yu's figure flickered, and he directly used Berserker Divine Walk to dodge. One had to admit that the Berserker's Lunatic Stampede was very useful, especially when combined with the Body of Purity. First of all, the Body of Purity could resist most control and mental attacks. And when the Berserker's Lunatic Stampede was used, it could also break through the shackles of external forces and instantly teleport to a nearby location. With the two combined, there was almost no control method that could stop Long Yu. Moreover, the superposition of Berserker Fist could also increase the speed of Berserker Divine Walk. Now that the Berserker Fist was more than 10 times faster, it increased the speed of Berserker Divine Walk by more than 10 times. No matter what method Seikong Yi used, it was impossible for him to even touch Long Yu. Chapter 1388. Now that the battle had reached this point, there was no need to continue. Long Yu was already standing on an undefeatable foundation. Although Seikong Yi's martial realm and basic strength were much higher than Long Yu's, he couldn't even touch the corner of Long Yu's clothes. Naturally, he couldn't defeat Long Yu. Berserker's divine stride allowed him to break through the restrictions of movement and instantly move to a nearby place at an extremely fast speed. Even deceleration and restriction techniques couldn't stop Long Yu. With such a movement technique, Long Yu's mobility was greatly improved. This berserker's heavenly body technique was worthy of being a high-grade, unbounded martial skill. After a few tries, Sikong Yi finally gave up. "I admit defeat." Sikong Yi said these 3 words out of pure helplessness. However, he also knew that he had no chance of winning even if he used all his skills. He originally thought that he could use more energy in his body to delay the battle until Long Yu's energy was exhausted. Then, he would have a chance of winning. However, he soon discovered that Long Yu's energy was also inexhaustible. This was because once Long Yu used up some of his energy, the siphon totem in his small world would explode, and he would be able to recover all of his energy in an instant. After Sikong Yi admitted defeat, everyone in the field was still in a daze. No one had expected that the final result of this battle would be Sikong Yi admitting defeat. It was truly unbelievable. One had to know that the gap between their martial realms was like heaven and earth, early king realm and early emperor realm. There was a difference of 3 levels, and the basic strength was more than 10 to 20 times different. It was really hard to accept that the battle would end up like this. They were originally expecting Sikong Yi to slap Long Yu in the face, but it turned out to be the other way around. The people of the Northern Snow Empire were a little dumbfounded. After admitting defeat, the 2 of them stopped fighting. Long Yu returned to the ground and smiled faintly at Sikong Yi. However, he saw Sikong Yi staring intently at him, as if he had something to ask. "Is there anything you want to ask?" Long Yu asked with a slight frown. "Since you've passed the test, come with me to the Northern Snow Empire." Sikong Yi shook his head. He seemed to have some misgivings and did not voice his doubts in public. Instead, he extended an invitation to Long Yu. Long Yu nodded. In any case, he still wanted to rest for a while before continuing to challenge others. There were still many geniuses in the Northern Snow Empire. It would be good to go to the Northern Snow Empire first. The 2 of them then left the examination venue under the strange and puzzled gazes of the others and went straight to the Northern Snow Empire through the teleportation portal. What everyone found strange was that although Sikong Yi had lost, he didn't show any anger or unwillingness. What exactly is going on? Just what kind of background did this tall and skinny young man called Mountain Ghost have? Many people present had never met the previous Long Yu. Of course, it was impossible for them to recognize the current Long Yu. However, it was different for Sikong Yi. He had seen Long Yu and fought with Long Yu before. Therefore, he had some understanding of the divine text of Netherworld that Long Yu had comprehended. Therefore, when Long Yu used the divine text of Netherworld to launch the boundless grasp in the battle just now, he had the feeling that he was facing Long Yu again and again. However, he was puzzled. If it was Long Yu, how could he still be in the early stage of the King Realm? This question was finally raised by Sikong Yi directly after he took Long Yu to the Northern Snow Empire. "I'm his disciple. I've come here to gain experience at his command." Long Yu didn't expose his identity. Instead, he smiled and pretended to be Long Yu's disciple. This feeling was slightly strange, but he didn't want anyone to know that he was Long Yu. At least, he wouldn't reveal anything related to this before the end of these 2 months of training. "I see." Sikong Yi immediately came to a sudden realization when he heard Long Yu's words. In this way, all his doubts were resolved. However, he hadn't expected that Long Yu had actually taken a disciple. Moreover, this disciple was so powerful that he was able to defeat him at the early stage of the Emperor Realm, while only at the early stage of the King Realm. It was simply unreasonable. If this was the case, didn't it mean that as long as Mountain Ghost stepped into the advanced stage of the King Realm, he would be able to participate in the battle of the Emperor Realm? This was indeed similar to Long Yu's demeanor in the past. Sikong Yi recalled that in the past, Long Yu had participated in the battle of the King Realm with the cultivation of the late stage of the King Realm and obtained the indisputable first place. Although he gave up the first place to his own people in the end, Long Yu's strength was definitely the strongest in the King Realm. No one could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Later on, Long Yu advanced to the early stage of the Emperor Realm and obtained the first place in the Battle of the King Realm with the cultivation of the early stage of the Emperor Realm. This was why Long Yu was so domineering. Even now, it still made people's blood boil when they thought about it. Although Sikong, he hadn't participated in the Battle of the King Realm at that time, his heart would surge every time he thought about it. Mountain Ghost, this shouldn't be your real name, right? Sikong, he asked. It doesn't matter if it's my real name or a fake one. I'm only here to gain experience. What does it matter if my name is real or fake? Long Yu laughed and brushed off the question. Mountain Ghost was a fake name he had been using all this time. He couldn't be bothered to think of another one. In any case, he would just treat his identity as Long Yu's disciple. The reason why I'm here is to find some opponents and cultivate the martial techniques I've learned. I wonder if Brother Sikong can introduce a few good opponents to me? Long Yu asked. Sikong nodded and said with a smile, Of course there are opponents. However, you probably won't be interested in those who are weaker than me. I can accompany you and spar with some of my friends. I'll observe your battles. It'll be of great help to my own martial Tao. Then I'll be troubling you. Long Yu nodded in agreement. There were many experts and geniuses in the Northern Snow Empire. Back when this was still the North Snow Empire, there were already many powerful experts in the North Snow Empire. Not all of them followed Long Yu to the outside world. Naturally, they could only stay here and develop themselves. Most of them should be in the Emperor Realm and Great Emperor Realm. The manners and manners from back then should be developing rapidly with more cultivation resources now. There must be many experts here. Long Yu followed Sikong to the current imperial capital of the Northern Snow Empire. After such a long period of development, the imperial capital of the Northern Snow Empire already had more than 100 great emperor experts. In the past, there hadn't been a single great emperor here. Among these great emperor experts, the strongest was naturally Yu Hanxin. Back then, Long Yu wanted Yu Hanxin to leave with him, but Yu Hanxin insisted on staying in the Northern Snow Empire. Therefore, Long Yu didn't force her. The current Yu Hanxin was at least at the emperor level. She was definitely the strongest expert in the Northern Snow Empire and the protector of the entire Northern Snow Empire. It was precisely because of Yu Hanxin's presence that the Northern Snow Empire could develop so smoothly. Otherwise, the Northern Snow Empire wouldn't be able to develop so smoothly just from the jealousy and suppression of other forces. Naturally, Long Yu wouldn't go looking for those great emperor experts. After all, he was only in the early stage of the King Realm. Seeking out great emperor experts would only be asking for trouble. Once he was done with all the Emperor Realm cultivators, he could change his identity and suppress his cultivation to Emperor Realm to challenge great Emperor Realm cultivators. Of course, there were definitely more great emperor experts in the holy city of the Five Emperors. Moreover, there were many familiar faces. Long Yu planned to take things one step at a time. When there weren't enough people in the Northern Snow Empire, he would go to the holy city of the Five Emperors to find other opponents. Under Sikong Yi's lead, Long Yu began his journey of challenging other emperor experts. He could basically find one or two opponents to spar with every day. With Long Yu's tyrannical combat strength, it was extremely strenuous for him to deal with his opponents when the disparity in cultivation was too great. However, it was precisely these kinds of battles that could improve Long Yu's understanding of martial techniques. During the process of sparring, Long Yu's understanding of the boundless grasp grew deeper and deeper. In just 3 days, he had challenged 5 opponents and cultivated the boundless grasp to the great completion stage. The great completion stage of the boundless grasp made the ceiling effect of pulling the opponent's strength stronger and longer. It was even more disgusting. Basically, the opponent would be caught off guard and pulled over by Long Yu. Then, he would blast them away with a berserker fist cannon. This repeated over and over again until the opponent was basically toyed with to death. In such battles, Long Yu mainly cultivated the boundless grasp and berserker fist cannon. He couldn't use the myriad illusions of the 5 emperors to speed up his cultivation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to work so hard. However, during the arduous process, his understanding of martial techniques also grew deeper and deeper. He could use the boundless grasp more easily. He had a better understanding of when to use it and when not to. Moreover, he was getting more and more experienced in fighting. After all, the people he was challenging now were all geniuses with stronger cultivation talents. They all had their own unique techniques and innate mystiques. There were all sorts of strange and bizarre abilities, some of which even caught Long Yu off guard. It was a good thing that the Berserker Fist Cannon's defenses were strong. Otherwise, he might have suffered a few unexpected losses. Half a month passed by in the blink of an eye. During this time, Long Yu had challenged quite a few young genius Emperor Realm experts of the Northern Snow Empire. Many of them were people he knew from before, just like Seekong E. For example, Snow Civet Manor's White Snow, Spirit Flame Manor's Black Flame King, Celestial Manor's Giant Elephant King, and so on. These manors were all factions that had existed when Long Yu was still around. Not only had they not disappeared, but they had actually grown stronger. As for White Snow, Black Flame King, Giant Elephant King, and the others who had participated in the Imperial Capital Grand Meet with him, most of them had reached the late Emperor Realm and were preparing to participate in the next strongest Emperor Realm competition. When Long Yu challenged them, he pretended that his martial Dao realm had increased and his suppressed cultivation to the late Emperor Realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to deal with these guys. Chapter 1389. As a late King Realm cultivator, Long Yu challenged quite a few late Emperor Realm cultivators in succession. His fame rose once more in the Northern Snow Empire, and as he challenged more and more people, his identity was gradually exposed. Of course, it wasn't Long Yu's identity, but his identity as Long Yu's disciple. After all, everyone who fought him could sense the presence of the divine script of Ninth Hell. It was no secret in the Northern Snow Empire that the script was related to Long Yu. Therefore, the news that Long Yu's disciple was training in the Northern Snow Empire quickly spread throughout the Northern Snow Empire. Finally, after half a month, Long Yu defeated most of his late Emperor Realm opponents. Under such circumstances, he once again raised his suppressed cultivation to early Emperor Realm and prepared to challenge early Great Emperor Realm opponents. Everyone in the Northern Sea Empire gasped in amazement at this rate of improvement. They'd never seen anyone rise from early King Realm all the way to early Emperor Realm in half a month. Counting it all up, it was roughly an advancement of one realm every 5 days. Even some geniuses could not advance so quickly. Long Yu's disciple was truly extraordinary. Long Yu had become a legend in the Northern Snow Empire. It was because of Long Yu that the Northern Snow Empire was able to appear in the sky above the holy city of the 5 emperors and become the center of the new martial world. Moreover, they were able to obtain more and more cultivation resources. Long Yu had built the Northern Snow Empire. Even Empress Yu Hanxin couldn't forget about him. Long Yu didn't think too much about it. If Yu Hanxin wanted to leave with him and go to the outside world, Long Yu would definitely bring her along. Now that the Northern Snow Empire was on the right track, Yu Hanxin's departure wouldn't affect anything. It was better for Long Yu to ask her when the time came. Long Yu began to challenge great emperors in the Northern Snow Empire. Most of them were veteran seniors, and the lords of manors and manors were all challenged by Long Yu. Now that he was a great emperor, Long Yu's strength had increased yet again. Every battle was more intense, and his understanding of the boundless grasp deepened. Moreover, Long Yu's challenges increased in intensity. He would challenge 3 or more great emperors every day. Half a month later, he'd challenged almost every great emperor in the Northern Snow Empire. And the result of Long Yu's cultivation was that he had finally cultivated the boundless grasp martial technique to the pinnacle realm. At its peak, the boundless grasp became an even more ferocious martial technique, the 3-part grasp. The first grip would be able to pull the opponent over and seal the power within their body. The stronger the opponent, the shorter the duration of the seal. If the opponent was at the same level as Long Yu, the effect of the seal would last for at least 5 breaths of time. Even if Long Yu were to fight an early emperor, the seal could last for about 2 breaths. This was enough for him to establish the foundation for victory. When the limitless grasp reached the pinnacle, it became a three-stage grasp. After the first stage, it could be followed by the second stage, using a tyrannical force to seal the spatial energy around the opponent, rendering them completely immobile. The first and second grips were extremely powerful control techniques. If they were used consecutively, the opponent would not be able to fight back at all. The third grasp, on the other hand, was an offensive method that could directly strike the opponent's vitals. It was similar to the void, rending blow that Long Yu had cultivated before. When the realmless grasp reached the pinnacle level, it would give birth to the third stage of the grasp. It would also officially announce that the Dragon Imperial Dragon, the space-shattering Holy Spring, and the space-shattering Fatal Blow, the pair of combat weapons and martial skills, would leave the stage of his battle. The Boundless Grasp was a high-grade, unbounded martial technique. When cultivated to its peak, the third grasp would be similar to the void-rending blow. In fact, it was several times more powerful than the void-rending blow. In comparison, the Duankong's Sacred Spring and void-rending blow were no longer necessary. After a moment's thought, Long Yu decided to give them to someone else. There was no point in keeping them anyway. The pinnacle grasp was already so powerful. Long Yu was looking forward to cultivating this unbounded martial technique to perfection, and perhaps even to the transcendent and transcendent realm. However, he still had to take things one step at a time. It was impossible to cultivate it to the transcendent realm in a short period of time. Still, he could give it a try. After all, he still had more than a month left to challenge more people. Now that he was done with the people from the Northern Snow Empire, he could go and challenge the people from the Holy City of the Five Emperors. The experts from the Holy City of the Five Emperors might not be stronger than the great emperors of the Northern Snow Empire, but they had the advantage in numbers. Long Yu had to take them down as soon as possible. After challenging the great emperors of the Northern Snow Empire, Long Yu quietly disappeared from the eyes of the great emperors of the Northern Snow Empire. Then, he changed his appearance once more and suppressed his cultivation to the level of an early-stage great emperor. He prepared to challenge the late-stage great emperors in the sacred cities of the Five Emperors. After that, Long Yu planned to increase his cultivation base to the mid-stage great emperor realm and challenge the one-star emperor. Then, he would reach the late-stage great emperor realm and challenge the two-star emperor. After that, there was no more. The strongest person in the new martial world was only at the level of the three-star emperor. Once he was done with the two-star emperor, it was basically over. There was still more than a month left. Long Yu was smart this time. Every time he challenged a great emperor, he would make an agreement with his opponent. If he lost, they would give him some medicinal pills or something. It was a gamble. He didn't need anyone to recommend him. Naturally, there would be a lot of people willing to fight him. Every time he appeared, he would change his appearance and fight in private. There wouldn't be as many people watching. Basically, Long Yu won every gamble and didn't want anything from his opponent. Even if his opponent lost, they wouldn't spread the news. Therefore, the fact that Long Yu challenged the holy city of the Five Emperors did not spread. In the process of each challenge, Long Yu's boundless grasp and fighting celestial body became more and more proficient. Their power grew stronger and stronger. Among the people Long Yu challenged, there were people he knew from before. For example, the Spirit Formation Master Su Chun, the Cabinet Elder of the Alliance of Five Emperors, the One-Eyed Ju Tian, and the middle-aged woman in white, Tan Xiuya. These three were the ones who worked together with Long Yu to overthrow the new Battle Emperor. They were Long Yu's acquaintances. However, they weren't close enough for Long Yu to bring them out of the new martial world. Of course, these three weren't young anymore. Even if they had enough cultivation resources, their development potential was limited. Moreover, they had organizations that had poured their blood, sweat, and tears into the new martial world. Even if Long Yu wanted to bring them out, they probably wouldn't be willing. They would only recommend some of their juniors to Long Yu. If that was the case, it wouldn't be necessary for Long Yu. He wasn't short of people, and these people were only in a cooperative relationship. There was no need for him to nurture their juniors, unless they were really talented enough to be on par with Red Oriole and the others in the Great World. However, even if such an existence appeared in the new martial world, they should have been shining a long time ago. It was impossible for them to remain unknown and need people to recommend them to Long Yu. Apart from these three, there was also the Flame Emperor, the Demon Emperor, and the Saint Emperor. These three still remained in the new martial world, maintaining the stability of the entire new martial world and promoting the prosperity of the new martial world's martial arts. These three were currently 3-star Emperor cultivators, and their personal disciples were mostly 1-star Emperor and 2-star Emperor cultivators. Long Yu challenged them one by one and gained quite a lot. After all, the disciples of the 5 emperors were the most talented young cultivators in the new martial world. Each of them had many extraordinary methods, and Long Yu learned a lot from fighting them. There were also the Lin Merchant Company, Su Medicine Shop, and so on. Long Yu knew quite a few of them from before. Now, he directly sent them dueling invitations. He didn't expose his identity, but he knew that these people were doing quite well in the new martial world. Regarding Long Yu's departure from the outside world, the collapse of the realm of 9 serenities, and the reconstruction of the Shunwu world into the new martial world, these things were only topics of conversation during their leisure time. If one were to say that it had any impact on their lives, it really didn't. In the holy city of the 5 emperors, what was in the past was still the same and didn't change much because of Long Yu. The one that changed the most was still the Northern Snow Empire. There were also some experts from the 6 sects and 10 countries. Among the new 6 sects and 10 countries, the Dragon Return Empire was also included. Originally, the Dragon Return Empire was just an ordinary empire near the holy city of the 5 emperors, but now it had also become one of the 6 sects and 10 countries. The Dragon Return Empire's Prime Minister Hung Yi, as well as Imperial Great General Zhang Tianyuan, had also become 2-star emperor experts. Long Yu challenged them one by one, and basically won every single one of them, but many of them were won with great difficulty. After all, he was suppressing his cultivation to only Emperor Realm primary stage. Against a 2-star Emperor expert, he would only be a 2-star Emperor Realm middle stage. Without using the 9 Serenity scripture, it wouldn't be easy for him to win. It was also under these circumstances that Long Yu was able to train in the Battle Berserker Heavenly Body and the Boundless Grasp. After another month, Long Yu had challenged at least 50 Emperor Realm combatants and at least 100 Emperor Realm cultivators. His Battle Berserker Heavenly Body and Boundless Grasp had once again reached the point where they were about to break through. In the end, Long Yu found someone he knew in the past and sent him a challenge to a wagered battle. This person was the Heavenly Fragrance Emperor, the Cabinet Elder of the Alliance of 5 Emperors. Long Yu still had some respect for the Heavenly Fragrance Emperor. When they first met, the Heavenly Fragrance Emperor was still an elder of Long Yu, and had helped Long Yu a few times, so he could be considered a friend of Long Yu. Long Yu wanted to ask if the Heavenly Fragrance Emperor was willing to follow him to the outside world, but when he saw the Heavenly Fragrance Emperor, he gave up on this idea. Chapter 1390. When Long Yu saw Tianxiang Emperor again, he found that he was already married and had a child. Previously, the Heavenly Incense Thearch had been an elder of the 5 Emperors Alliance and had many suitors. However, from the looks of it now, the Heavenly Incense Thearch had only fallen in love with one person. That was the former number 1 personal disciple of the Sacred Emperor, who was also the successor of the Sacred Emperor, Qi Tianming. Qi Tianming had a close relationship with Long Yu's senior brother, Xing Fa. Long Yu had a good impression of Qi Tianming. After the Sage Emperor left with Long Yu to the outside world, Qi Tianming took over as the new Sage Emperor. Now, Qi Tianming and the Heavenly Fragrance Emperor had become a couple and had given birth to a pair of cute babies. This caused Long Yu to feel somewhat awkward. Long Yu truly did not have the heart to disturb these 2 fellows. Thus, the matter of the gambling match was ruined. Find someone else. When Long Yu returned to the new martial world, his mentality was completely different from before. He saw some people he knew and some familiar things, and he felt a little emotional but not nostalgic. He continued to look for other opponents, and soon heard about a 3-star Emperor powerhouse, Black Knife. Long Yu had a deep impression of Black Knife. Black Knife had participated in the fantasy realm of the 5 emperors with him and Yi Ziwei. In the end, he had reached the 30th floor, while Black Knife and Yi Ziwei had reached the 28th floor. Later, Consort Yi took a fancy to Yi Ziwei and took her away to cultivate. Now, she was in the ruler's secret realm. As for Black Knife, he stayed in the new martial world alone, training hard. Although he was only a 3-star emperor, his strength was definitely not weaker than other 4 or 5-star emperors. I'll fight with him. If possible, I'll drag him to the Void Galaxy. After all, he's a genius like Yi Ziwei. As long as he has enough cultivation resources, his martial achievements will definitely not be low. He can become a major force in the Void Galaxy. As Long Yu thought about it, he made a battle plan with Black Knife. Black Knife could hardly find an opponent in the new martial world. He had even sparred with his master, the Demon Emperor, many times. Even the Demon Emperor was no match for him. Therefore, when Long Yu found Black Saber was concentrating on his cultivation alone. He wanted to reach a higher level in his martial arts realm. Unfortunately, without sufficient cultivation resources, it was too difficult for Black Saber to improve his martial path realm. When Long Yu's challenge letter was sent to Black Knife didn't hesitate to accept the challenge. The current Black Knife was simply too lonely. Although he was only a youth less than 20 years old, his strength had reached the peak in the new martial world. This made Long Yu blame himself for not establishing a stable talent selection system in the new martial world. Most importantly, he did not give the Demon Emperor and the others a way to contact him. It seemed that from now on, Long Yu had to establish some systems and raise the matter of talent selection. Only then would there be more and more geniuses in the Void Galaxy. As long as one had enough martial arts talent and could reach the 25th level of the fantasy world of the 5 emperors, they would be qualified to leave the new martial world and follow Long Yu to the Void Galaxy to develop. As for those who were too weak, Long Yu could not bring them out. After all, the cultivation resources in the Void Galaxy were not unlimited. Instead of wasting them on those who were not talented, Long Yu might as well use them himself. Black Knife, we meet again. When Black Knife left his cultivation place and followed Long Yu to a barren canyon in the new martial world, Long Yu greeted Black Knife with a smile. Black Knife frowned slightly and looked carefully at the tall and thin figure in front of him. He could not remember where he had seen him before. When Long Yu saw this, he faintly smiled and restored his appearance to his normal appearance. This caused Black Blade's expression to change. He immediately recognized who Long Yu was. This was actually nonsense. As long as Long Yu returned to his original appearance, how could Black Knife not recognize him? You are Long Yu. How is that possible? Didn't Long Yu leave this world and go to the Beyond Heavens world? Although this is Long Yu's small world, he and we are no longer people of the same world. How could he suddenly challenge me for no rhyme or reason? Black Knife said coldly. Who are you? What are you trying to do by pretending to be Long Yu? When Long Yu heard the words of the other party, his forehead was instantly filled with cold sweat. This guy was really stubborn. I am Long Yu, but I have suppressed my cultivation. The reason why I came to the new martial world is to gain experience and cultivate my martial skills. Sparring with you is also the same. I want to break through the bottleneck of my 2 martial skills. Long Yu shook his head and said to Black Knife, you don't have to be so nervous. I know you have no chance of improving in this micro world. It is a waste of your talent. Therefore, after this battle, I will bring you away to the macro world. I have a better place for you to cultivate and develop. At least, it will be easy for you to enter the ruler's secret realm. You really are Long Yu. Black Knife's expression changed slightly. He could feel the faint aura of the 9 nether divine characters coming from Long Yu's body, but he still shook his head. If I leave this place, I will not follow you anymore. My goal is to defeat you. If I follow you, how can I defeat you? Oh, Long Yu narrowed his eyes. This kid is interesting. With your current situation, not to mention defeating me, it's impossible for you to even defeat Yi Ziwei, who was once in the same state as you. Are you sure you want to venture out alone and not follow and join the faction I've established? Long Yu narrowed his eyes. Even Yi Ziwei is the same as me, a mid-level sovereign realm cultivator. She might even be slightly higher than me. If you roam the universe alone, you might not be able to obtain enough cultivation resources. How will I know if I don't try? Black Saber had been lonely for too long. Right now, his eyes were filled with fanaticism. When he looked at Long Yu, his eyes were filled with a dense, killing intent. This was his innate talent. Long Yu didn't know what kind of power it was, but it was obvious that it wasn't an ordinary power. How about this? I will suppress my cultivation to the level of a 1-star emperor and fight you. Long Yu smiled and said, if you can defeat me, I will bring you out of this small world and let you develop freely. But if you lose, you have to follow me back to my new faction and build the new faction with us. How about it? That's a promise. Black Knife nodded. Not long ago, he was only a 15-year-old boy. Now, after a few years, he had grown into a young man. He was less immature and more mature. He also had a sharper edge. In the new martial world, Black Knife didn't encounter too many setbacks. He only lost to Long Yu once in the Five Emperors fantasy world. Since then, he had always been suppressed by Long Yu. Therefore, it was normal for Black Knife to regard Long Yu as his life goal. I will naturally keep my word. The premise is that you have to defeat me. Although I have suppressed my cultivation to the level of a 1-star emperor, my strength surpasses that of an ordinary 3-star emperor. Don't be careless. Long Yu nodded and said, it's not easy to have a chance to fight with you. How can I be careless? I will definitely go all out. Even if I lose, I won't have any regrets. Black Knife said in a dignified tone. He was very clear that although he was basically invincible in the new martial world, he was absolutely not qualified to face Long Yu. Now that Long Yu had suppressed his cultivation to the level of a 1-star emperor, he must be very confident in himself. Black Knife didn't know what opportunities there were in the big world beyond the heavens, nor did he know what methods Long Yu had. But he was sure that Long Yu was definitely not easy to deal with. Then let's start. Long Yu nodded. He didn't use the boundless grasp at the beginning. Instead, he raised his hand and condensed the power of the 9 Nether Divine characters to summon a 9 Nether Hunter. Heartblade Third Cut. The 9 Nether Hunter quickly dashed towards Black Knife. The pair of scimitars in its hands instantly streaked across the sky, and the Heartblade Third Cut fell. The Heartblade Third Cut was an illusion attack that could trap the opponent in 3 layers of illusions. If the opponent's willpower was weak, he would be at a disadvantage when facing this move. When Long Yu fought before, he had used the Heartblade Third Cut a few times. Some of his opponents were directly trapped in 3 layers of illusions and had no chance to fight back. This made Long Yu quite disappointed. Now, while he was fighting Black Knife, it was also a test for him. Willpower was very important to a cultivator. What made Long Yu gratified was that the Black Saber was not affected by the illusion of the Heart Saber's third slash. It was only stunned for a moment, but it immediately reacted. The corners of its mouth curled up, and with a black dagger in its hand, its figure instantly moved. Puff! The black knife and the black dagger combined into one, and unexpectedly, it had become a peerless high-grade, unparalleled combat weapon. Long Yu was very clear about the power of an unparalleled combat weapon. However, in the entire new martial world, unparalleled combat weapons were extremely rare, and he had never seen anyone use them before. However, although they were rare, they still existed. For example, the Duankong Sacred Spring that Long Yu had previously obtained was also a high-grade, unparalleled combat weapon. However, it was sealed, and no one could obtain it until the Death Messenger told Long Yu the way to take away the Duankong Sacred Spring. It was unknown how Black Knife had obtained this black dagger, but one thing was for sure, its power was absolutely not to be underestimated. The Black Knife moved in a flash, fusing with the black dagger, and turned into a pitch-black stream of light that instantly pierced through the 9 Nether Hunter that Long Yu had summoned. The dense death chi directly enveloped the 9 Nether Hunter and annihilated it without a trace. Then, the pitch-black stream of light did not stop and directly attacked Long Yu. Such a fierce attack surprised Long Yu, and he began to get excited. Such an opponent was just the right choice for him to break through the bottleneck of his martial skill cultivation. Chapter 1391. The feeling of fighting with a black blade was completely different from the battles Long Yu had encountered before. The opponent's fierce attacks made him feel like he was facing a raging storm. However, Long Yu did not flinch at all. Instead, he became more and more excited. Only such an opponent could help him break through the bottleneck of his martial skills. Boundless Grasp and Battle Cry, Celestial Body. These two high-grade, unending level martial skills were extremely rare and tyrannical martial skills in the world. They were also very difficult to cultivate. And now, after a period of continuous challenges, Long Yu had basically raised these two martial skills to the critical point. He only needed one last step before he could raise these two martial skills to the next level. Battle Cry, Celestial Body Barrier. Facing the black blade that had turned into a stream of light, Long Yu's entire body was covered with a layer of defensive barrier. As the black blade turned into a dark stream of light and landed on Long Yu's defensive barrier, a dazzling light instantly burst out. The black blade's dark stream of light exploded, and his entire person retreated backward. Even though his martial arts realm was much higher than Long Yu's, he still could not break through Long Yu's Battle Cry, Celestial Body Barrier in one move. Of course, the key was that Long Yu's Battle Cry Celestial Body Barrier had a defensive ability of 3 times explosive power. It was extremely normal that the opponent could not break through it. After withstanding the opponent's fierce attack, Long Yu felt that all the Battle Cry divine runes on his body were boiling. This martial skill of Battle Cry, Celestial Body Barrier, seemed to be about to step into the transcendent realm. A trace of the Mad God's power suddenly came out of the alternate space and fell on Long Yu's body. Die! The black blade did not give Long Yu any time. It turned around and once again turned into a dark stream of light. The sharp blade light instantly stabbed at Long Yu's Battle Cry, Celestial Body Barrier. This move had actually blocked the Berserk God's power that Long Yu had sensed from the alternate dimension. The black saber had disrupted Long Yu's comprehension and was now charging towards him once again. Such a fast attack left Long Yu no time to think carefully. He could only immediately adjust his mind to resist the black blade's attack. Although the opportunity to comprehend was rare, it was obvious that the black blade would not give him such a chance. After all, Long Yu was now fighting against the black blade of the 3-star Emperor level with the cultivation of a 1-star Emperor. The difference in martial arts realm made the basic strength of the two differ by as much as 8 times. In addition, Black Blade was originally a genius who could challenge those of a higher level. Now that he had fused with the Black Dagger to an unparalleled level, the pitch-black stream of light that transformed into an attack was too sharp. Even Long Yu couldn't ignore it. Battle Cry Fist Cannon. Long Yu raised his hand and punched out. The Berserker Divine runes broke through the water like a flood dragon and landed on the pitch-black stream of light. The power of both sides condensed and collided with each other, exploding forth with an extremely powerful impact. Both of them were pushed back by the impact. At this time, Long Yu could feel that the Mad God's power was even more violent. It surged down from the alternate space and poured into Long Yu's body. This unknown Mad God's power made Long Yu's entire body shrouded in a violent aura, making his aura several times stronger. Where did this Mad God's power come from? Long Yu could feel that the power had not completely poured down, but had already increased the power of the Battle Cry God characters several times. Clearly, it came from the Battle Cry Celestial Body, a high-grade, unbounded martial skill. The Battle Cry Celestial Body was a martial skill that Long Yu had finally broken through from the consummate level to the transcendent level. After stepping into the transcendent level, the Battle Cry Celestial Body could absorb the Mad God's power from the alternate space, making Long Yu look like a mad god descending into the world. The power of the battle cry, celestial body, was several times stronger. Furthermore, as time passed, the Mad God's descent brought with it stronger and stronger Mad God's power, making long-used battlecry god characters stronger and stronger. Previously, the battlecry celestial body had allowed Long Yu to stack up every time he used the battlecry celestial body, doubling its power. Now, the Mad God descent was stacking up over time, increasing Long Yu's fighting strength in two ways. In this way, as long as the battle continued, Long Yu's power would become extremely tyrannical. Basically, as long as the battle reached a certain stage, as long as Long Yu didn't die, he would be able to crush his opponents with absolute power. Battlecry's celestial body was indeed an unbounded upper-level martial skill. Especially after reaching the transcendent level, the effect of the Mad God's descent appeared, making this move undergo a complete transformation. The aura of the battlecry celestial body continued to gather on Long Yu's body, making Black Knife feel threatened. Moying Ghost Killer. Seeing this, Black Knife knew that he couldn't continue fighting with Long Yu. He had a lot of battle experience, and the moment he saw this, he knew that Long Yu's condition was getting stronger and stronger. It wasn't that Black Knife hadn't seen this kind of method before. Especially among the battlecry celestial body skills, some people's innate magical powers had similar effects. But of course, it wasn't as powerful as the martial skill that Long Yu was using now. Almost every breath of time, Long Yu's power would increase by a little. Every 3 breaths, the aura of the battlecry celestial body skill would double. Such speed simply made Black Knife a little confused. What kind of martial skill could have such power and effect? Moreover, Black Knife was very clear that the battlecry celestial body skill wasn't Long Yu's original celestial body skill. The celestial body skill that Long Yu was most proficient in should be the shadow attribute celestial body skill. But now, why was he so proficient in the battlecry celestial body skill? In actual fact, Long Yu's compatibility with the battlecry celestial body skill wasn't very high, probably only at the 7th level of compatibility. If he was able to be compatible with the battlecry celestial body skill to a higher level, then the might of the battlecry celestial body skill would be even more terrifying. Black Knife's killer move was used directly. The black dagger in his hand, which was compatible to the unparalleled realm, instantly turned into numerous pitch black shadows, condensing into several ghost killer blades, which broke through the air towards Long Yu. This move was Black Knife's killer move, and its might was obviously not ordinary. The pitch-black ghost killer blades which broke through the air were like sharp needles, piercing towards Long Yu's body. Battlecry, celestial body skill barrier. Long Yu didn't hesitate to display the defensive move Battlecry, celestial body skill barrier. Instantly, the Battlecry celestial body skill, which had been strengthened by the descent of the Berserker celestial body skill barrier, enveloped Long Yu's body, and it was amplified by 3 times. This layer of Battlecry celestial body skill barrier's defensive ability had basically reached Long Yu's strongest level, instantly erupting with a terrifying aura of the divine text. Countless pitch-black ghost killer blades pierced the Battlecry celestial body skill barrier, but it was completely unable to break through it. But the key point was that Black Knife's attacks were like a torrential storm, constantly attacking. Black Shadow, Ghost Killer. The biggest feature of this move was that it was endless. The torrential storm constantly attacked the surroundings of Long Yu's body, making him unable to retaliate at all. The opponent's attacks were simply too concentrated. At this point, Long Yu finally understood that there was a reason why Black Knife was able to defeat unparalleled celestial body skill in the entire Neo martial world. Just this Black Shadow, Ghost Killer, was enough to make most people unable to withstand it. One must know that even Battlecry, celestial body who had broken through to the transcendent realm, was forced to a state where he could only defend, so one could imagine how fierce the opponent's attack was. However, in the midst of the chaos, Long Yu did not panic. Instead, he continued to look for and wait for an opportunity. Black Knife's figure constantly rotated around him, changing positions, and, generally, it was really difficult to find an opportunity. However, under Long Yu's relentless waiting and searching, he finally found a flaw in Black Knife's defense. Under the endless storm of ghost killer blades, Long Yu suddenly made a move. Boundless Grasp. Finally, he unleashed another high-tier, unbounded martial skill, which he used to strike Black Saber in the midst of all of the attacks coming at him. Black Knife had no time to react, and he was directly pulled to his side by Long Yu. What the hell is this martial skill? Black Blade was completely shocked. He was originally circling around Long Yu and launching attacks with nowhere to run. However, he was suddenly pulled to Long Yu's side. Moreover, Black Blade felt that the power within his body was directly sealed. The storm-like attacks just now came to an abrupt halt. It's done. The corner of Long Yu's mouth curled up slightly, and he continued to use the second grip of the Boundless Grasp. In an instant, there was an unknown power that directly sealed Black Knife's entire body, trapping him in an enclosed space. Black Knife was now completely subdued by Long Yu. The two consecutive restraints of the Boundless Grasp made it impossible for him to escape from the palm of Long Yu's hand. However, Black Knife was not so easy to deal with. After all, his martial path realm was 2 levels higher than Long Yu's, and he also had the strength to challenge those of a higher level. Faced with the current situation, Black Knife did not hesitate to use a life-saving move. His entire body suddenly turned into a cloud of black smoke. This move was not driven by the power in his body, but by his Black Dagger battle weapon. After all, he and the Black Dagger were at an unparalleled level. Although Long Yu had Black Knife's entire body under control, he could not control his Black Dagger. The Black Dagger directly turned Black Knife himself into a cloud of black smoke, and then he quickly ran out of the enclosed space created by Long Yu. He had actually escaped from Long Yu's control in this way. This somewhat surprised Long Yu. Since he had practiced the third grip, this was the first time that someone had been able to escape. This made him think more highly of Black Knife. There was no doubt that in Long Yu's mind, Black Knife was absolutely qualified to go to the Void Galaxy with him. In this case, he could not lose to Black Knife. Although such a talent was very hostile to him and had a fanatical desire to challenge him, he had to win him over to his side. As long as he defeated him once, Long Yu would definitely be able to continuously control this person in the future and control him. Chapter 1392. When Black Saber turned into black smoke and escaped from the sealed space of Long Yu's Boundless Grasp, the seal on his own power was lifted, and his demonic chi blossomed once again. The more the battle went on, the stronger Black Saber's fighting spirit became. It was so strong that even Long Yu felt a little afraid. His demonic chi spread all over his body, and his aura grew stronger and stronger. It was actually growing at the same speed as Long Yu's Mad God Descends. Secret martial arts technique? With a single glance, Long Yu was able to tell that this move was some kind of secret martial art. Moreover, it had already been cultivated to the 6th level. Of course, if he wanted to improve from the 6th level, it was not something that Black Saber could do. This was because there were basically no creations in the new martial world, and Black Saber could not obtain the power of creation to continue improving his secret martial arts technique. However, just the 6th level of the secret martial arts technique was enough to make Long Yu very jealous. Black Saber's secret martial arts technique could continuously increase the power of his shadow attribute divine characters. Although he did not know if there was an upper limit for Long Yu, if he could learn it, it would greatly increase his combat strength. After all, Long Yu mainly cultivated the shadow attribute divine characters. Among them, he had already comprehended 60% of the Revelation grade 9 Serenity's divine characters. In addition, his compatibility with the shadow attribute divine characters had also reached the 12th level, which was the peak. This was a level that many 7th stage great sovereigns might not be able to reach. After all, There were not many pills and treasures in this world that could increase a cultivator's compatibility with the divine characters. It was purely a coincidence that Long Yu could reach the 12th level with the shadow attribute divine characters. Now, Black Saber had actually cultivated a secret martial arts technique that continuously increased the power of the shadow attribute divine characters in his body. This method was no less inferior to the battle heaven body martial technique that Long Yu had mastered. It was actually comparable to an unbounded high-grade martial technique. Moreover, it was aimed at the shadow attribute divine characters. This undoubtedly tempted Long Yu. First, I'll defeat Black Saber and then exchange some things with him to see if he's willing to hand over this secret martial arts technique. Long Yu thought to himself. His expression turned cold, and he became even more focused. As Black Saber's power level increased, the advantage brought by Long Yu's Berserk God's Descent was gradually being reduced. Although the effects of Berserk God's Descent were still stacking up, the stacking speed was no longer as fast as it was at the beginning. Right now, Long Yu's Berserk God Descend to the World method provided him with 10 times the power of the Berserk God rune. In addition, there were a few layers of Berserk God rune, which also increased the power of the Berserk God rune by several times. At this point, the speed at which Mad God descends to the world was improving had slowed down. On the other hand, Black Saber's martial arts secret technique had increased Black Saber's strength by 3 to 5 times in just 3 breaths' time. Moing Ghost Killer. It was the same move again, but this time, the destructive power of the Black Blade was a few times stronger than before. This move was the most powerful move that he had developed after he, and the Black Dagger in his hand, had reached an unparalleled level. It was similar to the Void Burial skill that was derived from the combination of the Dragon Defense and the Void Spirit Dragon Blade. Unfortunately, the Void Spirit Dragon Blade wasn't by Long Yu's side. Otherwise, he could try going head-to-head with the opponent. The result of the clash would definitely be that the Void Spirit Dragon Blade had the upper hand. This was something Long Yu could confirm. After all, the Void Spirit Dragon Blade's body was filled with water attribute absolute beginning energy, which was much stronger than the shadow attributed divine rune in the opponent's Black Dagger. But this was the first time that Long Yu had met an opponent who was compatible with his weapon. Of course, he was itching for a fight. Unfortunately, he couldn't possibly summon the Void Spirit Dragon Blade over. After all, Little Void was outside, keeping a lookout for him. Safety was still the most important thing. Long Yu didn't think too much about this problem. Instead, he used the War Berserker Celestial Barrier again. The overbearing power of the War Berserker Divine Rune covered his entire body. This time, the opponent's attack was even fiercer, and it was starting to take effect. In addition, the War Berserker Celestial Barrier that Long Yu used this time wasn't able to explode with a stronger defensive ability. It didn't bring out the effect of an unbounded martial skill, so its defensive ability wasn't very strong. Black Saber's Shadow Ghost Killer was like a torrential downpour as it rained down on Long Yu. The War Berserker Celestial Barrier was almost instantly destroyed. It's actually so strong. Long Yu's expression changed slightly. It wasn't surprising for something like this to happen when he was fighting an opponent of similar strength. Long Yu was glad that he hadn't been careless and suppressed his strength to the 3-star Emperor's Black Saber. Instead, he had suppressed his strength to the 1-star Emperor level. Otherwise, he really wouldn't be Black Saber's opponent. Boundless Grasp. Keep going. Long Yu couldn't defend against his opponent's attack, so he gave up on defense and used offense as defense. The Boundless Grasp continued to sweep out, and without warning, Black Saber was pulled to his side. Void Rending Wound. Without hesitation, Long Yu used the 3rd section of the Boundless Grasp. The terrifying power of Void Rending Wound invaded Black Saber's body and slammed into his dantian. The 3rd stage of the Limitless Grasp was equivalent to a penetrative attack, like the space-severing kill. At this moment, Long Yu was confident that he could seriously injure Black Blade. Serious injuries wouldn't kill him. Long Yu had medicinal pills that could heal, so he didn't have to worry about injuring his opponent. The boundless grasp, void, rending wound, and annihilation sent Black Saber flying backward. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, and his body was seriously injured. Fortunately, he had used the power of the divine characters to protect his Danteon at the critical moment, so it hadn't been destroyed. Long Yu's strange methods made Black Saber realize that if he didn't use some ultimate techniques, it would be too difficult to deal with Long Yu. He might even be killed by Long Yu. Battle Celestial Bodies and Unbounded Grasp were two high-grade, unbounded martial techniques that had left a deep impression on Black Saber. Of course, he had a way to deal with Battle Celestial Bodies and Unbounded Grasp, which was a secret magic he could use to fight back against Long Yu's Berserker God Advent. Add to that the fact that Long Yu's compatibility with the Mad God's divine characters wasn't very high, so Long Yu couldn't rely on fighting Celestial Body to kill Black Saber. But the Boundless Grasp was truly disgusting. It didn't make any sense at all, and it could directly pull Black Saber back. He had only used it twice, and Black Saber was already in great pain. He hated this martial skill of Long Yu's. I concede, Black Saber finally opened his mouth, and the first two words made Long Yu relax a little. Did this kid finally concede? It seemed like the Boundless Grasp and the void-piercing wound had injured this brat quite badly. However, just as Long Yu was thinking this, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Black Saber hadn't said the word concede. Moreover, Long Yu could feel a strange energy gathering beside him. Taking advantage of the moment when he was distracted, it had already surrounded him. This kid, he dares to play tricks on me. Long Yu's heart stirred, and his entire person had already entered into an extremely vigilant state. The technique that the other party was executing now was extremely tyrannical, and the threat that it posed to Long Yu even far surpassed that ink shadow, ghostly kill from before. This is the aura of a god formation. Could it be a grade 1 god formation? Long Yu couldn't help but feel surprised when he sensed the strange power around him. This Black Saber had learned a grade 1 god formation. Even in the Beyond Heaven world, grade 1 divine array techniques were not something that just anyone could learn. In fact, they were extremely rare existences. Rumor had it that a grade 1 god formation was a necessary cornerstone to become a demigod. Without a grade 1 god formation, it was impossible for a cultivator to become a demigod. From this, it could be seen that a grade 1 god formation must have some secrets. And now, Black Saber had learned a grade 1 god formation. This could be a secret inheritance from the Shenwu world. Long Yu's heart skipped a beat. He had scanned through the entire Shenwu world before and couldn't find this inheritance. It could be seen that the expert who left this inheritance, even if he wasn't as strong as the Geo-Dragon Emperor, was not far from it. Other than this possibility, Long Yu couldn't think of where Black Saber learned a grade 1 god formation from. But now is not the time for Long Yu to think about where the opponent learned a grade 1 god formation from. The most important thing was to defend against this powerful technique. At this moment, the strange power of the Shadow Attribute Divine Text had completely surrounded Long Yu, making it impossible for him to escape. Under this situation, Long Yu once again used the Battle Frenzy Celestial Barrier and doubled his defense. But even so, Long Yu still felt that it wasn't appropriate. The power of this grade 1 god formation is truly unbelievable. Long Yu's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, he used the Boundless Grasp martial technique. The strange and mysterious power of space directly appeared around Long Yu's body. This was a natural reaction from Long Yu. It was also at this moment that Long Yu realized that his Boundless Grasp martial technique had finally achieved a breakthrough. Now that the Boundless Grasp had reached the peak level, it gave birth to a new defensive technique, the Boundless Seal. A mysterious and strange space energy formed an invisible barrier, enveloping Long Yu within it. Following that, the Shadow Attribute Divine runes on the outside finally condensed and formed, brazenly activating. The Realmless Seal and the Grade 1 God Array, the strongest powers that both sides held clashed against each other. Long Yu had just comprehended the Limitless Seal technique, so he wasn't very proficient with it yet. But when that layer of strange, spatial energy formed a barrier, it easily blocked the opponent's Grade 1 God array. What? This move of mine. When Blackblade, who was watching from afar, saw this scene, he was instantly stunned. He had consecutively used martial arts techniques to strengthen the shadow attribute divine runes, as well as this Grade 1 God array. Wasn't it all for the sake of killing Longyu? However, he did not expect that Longyu would actually be able to block this move of his. Chapter 1393. This secret martial art technique and the cultivation method of a first-grade god formation were indeed inherited by Blackblade from a relic in the Shunwu world. The person who left the inheritance was also a demigod who was not much weaker than the Jiuyo Dragon Emperor. Longyu, who had mastered 80% of the Mark of 9 Serenities, could not directly detect the existence of the relic. Only when Blackblade entered the relic would the will left behind by the inheritor be activated, wanting to pass the inheritance to Blackblade. However, there was still no suspense. Longyu directly blocked the strongest attack of the Black Saber. After the Boundless Grasp was cultivated to the Consummation Realm, a new technique, the Boundless Seal, was born. The Boundless Seal was similar to the Dark Star Confinement that Longyu had cultivated before. Not only could it be used to confine enemies, but it could also be used to protect oneself. When used to seal an opponent, the Boundless Seal could make it impossible for the opponent to escape. In fact, Longyu felt that even the disintegration effect of his Path of 9 Serenities Space Divine Rune would be useless. This was because the composition of the Boundless Seal was not any elemental space divine rune. It was chosen by Longyu. Just like the Boundless Grasp, Longyu could use the Revelation level 9 Serenities divine rune to activate the Boundless Seal. This way, the Boundless Seal would be formed from the 9 Serenities divine rune. No matter what power Longyu used to activate the Boundless Seal, the effect would be the same. However, if he used different powers to activate it, he could add different special effects. For example, Longyu's compatibility with the Shadow Element Divine Rune had reached level 12, so any Shadow Element Divine Rune that he comprehended would have a strong corrosive effect. This effect could also be reflected on the Boundless Seal, but it was not very effective. After all, the Boundless Seal was not an offensive technique. When Longyu faced the tyrannical attack of the Black Saber, he finally broke through the Limitless Grasp martial skill to the Perfection Realm, and even produced the Limitless Seal. As a defensive method, the Realmless Seal's defensive capabilities definitely surpassed any of the methods that Longyu had practiced before. The Black Blade attacked with all its might, and it suddenly exploded with a destructive power that was more than 10 times stronger than before, but it still did not shake the Boundless Seal in the slightest. From this, it could be seen how strong the defense of the Boundless Seal was. Of course, this was also because when Longyu used the Boundless Seal this time, he directly exploded his defense power by 3 times. It was normal that the Black Saber couldn't break through it. While Black Knife was shocked, Longyu did not give him any chances. Limitless Seal. Longyu shouted, and the Boundless Seal was unleashed once again. The Netherworld divine characters surged out and sealed Black Knife's entire body within it. Being surrounded by the Realmless Seal, Longyu could no longer feel the aura of the Black Blade in the Realmless Seal. At this time, he could start to superimpose the Heaven Power. The effect of the descent of the Berserker God continued to superimpose, but the effect was not particularly obvious. The power of the Berserker God's runes increased over time, and after increasing all the way to 10 times, it almost stopped. But now, Longyu had trapped the Black Blade within the Limitless Seal. It was like a pitch-black sphere enveloping the Black Blade. Longyu then unleashed his Berserker Fist Cannon at the Limitless Seal. As the Berserker Fist Cannons blasted out, the Berserker Fist Cannons caused the Berserker Fist Cannons on Longyu's body to continuously stack up, layer after layer, extremely fast. However, at the same time, the Boundless Seal was also rapidly destroyed by Longyu. He used this move to seal his opponent's black knife, and at the same time, superimpose his own heaven power, which could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Because Black Knife was also constantly trying to use methods to destroy the seal that imprisoned him in the Realmless Seal. The speed at which the Realmless Seal was destroyed was still very fast. In just 5 or 6 breaths of time, the Limitless Seal was finally broken under the pincer attack of both sides. But at this moment, Long Yu's fighting heaven's momentum, in addition to his previous state, had already accumulated to more than 20 layers. Coupled with the effect of the descent of the Berserker God brought by Long Yu, the power of his own Berserker God's runes had increased by more than 30 times. Such a terrifying increase in power made Long Yu's whole person really look like a Berserker God descending to the world. The pressure alone had already made Black Knife, who had just escaped from the binding of the Realmless Seal, feel an extremely strong sense of oppression. This power, a look of disbelief appeared on Black Knife's face. When he was sealed in the Realmless Seal by Long Yu's body did not have such a strong power. Now that he came out, he found that Long Yu's aura of coercion had increased by 10 times, which undoubtedly made Black Knife feel a little strange. Previously, Black Knife used the secret martial arts technique of the 6th level to increase his own strength by about 5 times. But now Long Yu directly increased the power of his Berserker God's runes by more than 30 times. This was obviously a different concept. Perhaps if Black Knife could upgrade the secret martial arts technique to the peak of the 9th level, the effect would be comparable to the heaven power of Berserker that Long Yu cultivated. However, it was obvious that the current Black Knife had no way to achieve this. If he wanted to upgrade the secret martial arts technique after the 6th level, he could only absorb the power of creation. The most important thing now was that Black Knife could not get any creation at all, let alone absorb the power of creation. In comparison, Long Yu was a notch higher. Berserker Fist Cannon. Long Yu simply punched. Black Knife, who had just escaped from the Realmless Seal, encountered Long Yu's punch and wanted to dodge subconsciously. Unfortunately, the power of Long Yu's punch had increased, and the speed had also increased by more than 30 times. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Black Knife and punched him in the chest. This punch almost took Black Knife's life, and his whole body was blasted away by the huge force. The destructive power of the Berserker God's runes was one of the strongest attributes of the runes. At this moment, Long Yu's punch had caused serious damage to the meridians in Black Knife's body. Black Knife's whole body fell heavily to the ground, smashing a cloud of sand and stones. He kept vomiting blood, and the serious injuries he suffered in his body made him almost unable to stand again. Long Yu stepped forward and soon came in front of Black Knife. "How is it, Black Knife? You are not my opponent," Long Yu said indifferently, with a victorious smile on his face. Black Knife's injuries were serious this time. Although it was only a Berserker Fist Cannon, this punch was stacked with more than 30 times the power of the Berserker God's runes. It was enough to seriously injure Black Knife. Black Knife couldn't stand up. He could speak, but he was stuttering, "I am indeed not your opponent now, but one day, since you have admitted it, then follow me for the time being. Whether you can surpass me in the future, it will depend on your own efforts." The corner of Long Yu's mouth curled up. "At least for now, you are my man. Work hard, and I will not treat you badly. When you arrive at that place, I will provide you with enough creation items and even cultivation resources that you can't imagine. At least, you will be able to step into the ruler's secret realm in a short period of time." As Long Yu spoke, he threw a healing pill into Black Knife's mouth and let him swallow it. The healing pill's medicinal power quickly spread, gradually repairing Black Knife's damaged flesh and meridians. The speed of his recovery was extremely fast. Long Yu asked, "Can you teach me the martial path secret technique that can increase the power of the shadow attribute divine runes? In exchange, I will also teach you a very good martial arts secret technique." Long Yu wanted to use balance control to exchange with Black Knife. In truth, it was not a loss for Long Yu, and it was definitely not a loss for Black Knife. But Long Yu didn't expect that the kid would reject him. I don't accept. I can't teach you my martial path secret technique. You should know that my biggest goal is you. How can I be willing to let you become stronger? He Dao's injuries recovered, and he gradually floated up from the ground. After that, he arrived in front of Long Yu. His eyes were still filled with fanaticism. I will defeat you, so I will not hand over these things that I have obtained to you. It doesn't matter. Long Yu narrowed his eyes slightly. He didn't expect Black Knife to be so competitive toward him. In order to defeat him, Black Knife was even willing to give up the opportunity to strengthen himself. If Black Knife cultivated Long Yu's martial path secret technique of balance control, his overall strength would definitely improve a lot. Of course, in comparison, if Long Yu obtained the martial path secret technique that could increase the power of the shadow attribute divine runes, his combat strength would also increase a lot. It was precisely because Black Knife knew how important the martial path secret technique he cultivated was to Long Yu that he refused to teach it to Long Yu. Otherwise, if Long Yu became stronger, it would be even more impossible for him to catch up and defeat Long Yu. After all, the gap between them was already very big. Unless Black Knife first caught up with Long Yu in terms of martial path realm, and then surpassed Long Yu, it would be impossible for him to be Long Yu's opponent in the future. In any case, Long Yu finally subdued Black Knife and let him stay in the new martial world. When Long Yu returned to the Void Galaxy, he planned to let Black Knife leave the new martial world and go to the Void Galaxy. As for now, if Long Yu were to release the Black Blade, it would be completely useless. Furthermore, he was afraid that the Black Blade would slip away if he wasn't careful. It should be known that this guy was not a quiet guy. It was very likely that he would suddenly slip away. After all, for Black Knife, his biggest goal was to defeat Long Yu. Long Yu did not know what kind of hatred Black Knife had for him, but since Black Knife had made Long Yu his target, his desire to become stronger should be very strong. Such a guy would definitely be a great help to the Void Galaxy. For the time being, Long Yu did not know if there were any other techniques in the inheritance that Black Knife had obtained. If there were, Black Knife's combat strength might not necessarily be inferior to Long Yu's. Of course, the possibility of Black Knife surpassing Long Yu is extremely low. After all, the Juyo Dragon Emperor's inheritance that Long Yu had obtained and the Juyo Prison Tablet were existences that even the Juyo Dragon Emperor could not figure out. Chapter 1394. Of course, Long Yu respected Black Knife's choice. He could not force him to follow his will. Anyway, for Long Yu, the secret martial arts technique that enhanced the power of the shadow attribute divine rune was just icing on the cake. Although it was useful, it was not something that he needed. At least, it was not something that he needed for the time being. Long Yu could not force Black Knife to hand it over. In addition, the combat strength that Black Blade had displayed just now had already caused Long Yu to have a whole new level of respect for him. If Black Blade was given some time and opportunity, he would definitely be able to bring his strength to a whole new level and skyrocket. It was likely that before Black Knife defeated Long Yu, Black Knife would not choose to leave, and Long Yu would never be defeated by Black Knife. Thinking about it this way, Black Knife was basically tied to the Star River Void. This was a good thing for the entire Void Galaxy. After all, with Black Knife, when he grew up in the future, the overall strength of the entire Void Galaxy would be enhanced. After settling the matter with Black Knife, Long Yu had also achieved his own goal. His original goal when he returned to his small world, the new martial world, was to cultivate the upper unending level martial arts technique, Fighting Mad Celestial Body, and the upper unending level martial arts technique, Boundless Grasp. But now, these two martial arts techniques have been greatly improved. Among them, Fighting Mad Celestial Body had stepped into the transcendent realm and obtained the effective descent of the Mad God, which could increase the power of the Mad God rune by 10 times in a short period of time. In addition, the Boundless Grasp had also been cultivated to the perfect realm. He could activate the Boundless Seal. If he used it on himself, it would be a tyrannical defensive move. If he used it on the enemy, it would be an unbreakable imprisonment move. Regardless of whether it was the warring mad celestial body or the boundless grasp, After nearly 3 months of dedicated training, they had become one of Long Yu's strongest techniques. He was quite satisfied with this result. Next, the time limit of 3 months was approaching. If everything went well, Heaven Fire Doyen should appear in front of Long Yu. In order to prepare for the arrival of the Heaven Fire Doyen, Long Yu prepared to leave his small world after settling the matter of Black Saber. Black Saber listened to Long Yu and temporarily stayed in Long Yu's small world. He obtained the 5 third-grade Earth Seal level creation items that Long Yu had prepared for him and allowed him to cultivate slowly. A third-grade Earth Seal grade creation item was considered a very common item for Long Yu. Even if he absorbed it, the effects wouldn't be too good. But for Black Saber, who is only a 3-star Emperor, a third-grade Earthly Seal level creation item was undoubtedly able to raise his martial arts realm by 1 level. Furthermore, it would further enhance Black Blade's secret martial arts technique. Even if it was just a single level, it would greatly enhance the effects of his secret martial arts technique that enhanced the power of the Shadow Attribute Divine characters. Of course, if he wanted to use these creations to improve the martial arts secret technique to the 7th level, he would have to absorb all of the creation power in them, which was probably just barely enough. For Black Saber now, the most important thing was to quickly raise his martial arts realm cultivation. Of course, as for how Black Saber would use the 5 third-grade Earthly Seal level creation items, it had nothing to do with Long Yu. He couldn't be bothered to care about Black Saber's details. His thoughts were mainly on the Heaven Fire Doyen. After leaving his small world and returning to the Great World, Long Yu returned to the center of the twin-star turbulence energy whirlpool. It was a relatively calm place, and he waited quietly for the arrival of the Heaven Fire Doyen. After all, the Heaven Fire Doyen had said that he would come in 3 months. As for whether he meant what he said, Long Yu wasn't worried. It would be best if it was the truth. They could finally discuss the invitation. However, if it was a lie, it would be a little troublesome for Long Yu. After all, if the Heaven Fire Doyen didn't arrive within the stipulated time, who knew if he would come? Long Yu couldn't wait here, but he couldn't wait either. It would be very awkward. Fortunately, the Heaven Fire Doyen didn't disappoint Long Yu. On the 2nd day after Long Yu left his small world, a dazzling fiery red light appeared in Long Yu's vision and rolled over from afar. The fiery cloud surged over. Along the way, even the twin-star turbulence energy whirlpool was dispersed and devoured by the fiery cloud. It couldn't stop the fiery cloud's advance at all. With such an existence, Long Yu was sure that the fiery cloud had reached the 7th rank ruler. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary 7th rank ruler. It was one of the strongest 7th rank rulers. If it was an ordinary 7th rank ruler, it wouldn't be able to ride the waves in the twin-star turbulence. The Heaven Fire Doyen has finally appeared. Long Yu put away the 9 Underworld Prison Tablet and the Void Nether Dragon Blade. He quietly floated alone in the middle of the twin-star turbulence. Then, he calmly observed the fiery cloud approaching him from afar. Soon, the fiery cloud penetrated the twin-star turbulence energy whirlpool and arrived in the middle of the twin-star turbulence. In almost an instant, it arrived in front of Long Yu. The fiery cloud that arrived in front of Long Yu was completely a fiery cloud. Apart from the fiery primordial power, there seemed to be nothing else in the fiery cloud, yet it also seemed to have everything. This feeling was very strange. However, Long Yu didn't pay attention to it for long. Soon, he felt that it was strange. Could this fiery cloud be the Heaven Fire Doyen? Soon, Long Yu's guess was confirmed. That was because, although there wasn't anyone within the fiery cloud, Long Yu had received a wisp of divine sense when the fiery cloud arrived. Very good, very good. Not bad, not bad. You are the little brat that broke my illusion array. You are quite talented. I can consider taking you in as a disciple. This trace of consciousness entered Long Yu's mind, which made Long Yu feel a little awkward. He really wasn't here to become the disciple of the Heaven Fire Doyen. Seeing how certain the other party was, Long Yu felt a little conflicted. However, he still denied the other party's statement. Senior Heaven Fire Doyen, I didn't come here to become your disciple. I have an invitation. Please take a look. This is the recommendation jade slip left behind by your friend. You will understand after reading this jade slip. As Long Yu spoke, he took out the jade slip left behind by Little White and threw it at the fiery cloud. Previously, the Heaven Fire Doyen didn't come personally. He only left behind some illusion arrays. Therefore, when Long Yu took out the recommendation jade slip, the illusion arrays naturally couldn't be checked. But now, it was obvious that the Heaven Fire Doyen had come in person. Although he didn't see his figure, it could be assumed that the fiery cloud was the Heaven Fire Doyen's actual body. Long Yu tossed the jade slip out. Sure enough, the fire cloud condensed into a hand of fire and caught it. Then, it seemed to glance through the contents of the jade slip. Then, it let out a soft sound as if it was very surprised. I didn't expect you to not come to become my disciple. Instead, you are here to invite me to watch over your faction. Little brat, I'm afraid you are wrong. Even with the recommendation of that brat, Little White, it's impossible for me to go with you. The Heaven Fire Doyen's consciousness appeared in Long Yu's mind. It was a direct rejection. However, this was within Long Yu's expectations. Thus, he did not find it strange at all. Instead, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he confidently said, Senior, do you agree or not? Why don't I explain the situation to you? Originally, I wasn't interested. However, since that brat, Little White, brought me a recommendation jade slip, it wouldn't make sense if I didn't listen to you. The Heaven Fire Doyen's faint consciousness entered Long Yu's mind. It could be seen that the relationship between the Heaven Fire Doyen and Little White wasn't bad. It was very likely that they were friends despite the difference in age. It was because the Heaven Fire Doyen approved of Little White that he was willing to listen to Long Yu, who was recommended by Little White, speak a few more words. Otherwise, the Heaven Fire Doyen would probably turn around and leave. After all, the Heaven Fire Doyen's time was very precious. Moreover, he wasn't the slightest bit interested in the faction that Long Yu mentioned. In fact, when the Heaven Fire Doyen discovered that Long Yu wasn't here to become his disciple, he was already rather angry. This was because he had come all the way here only to discover that the brat wasn't here to become his disciple. One could imagine how he felt after coming all the way here for nothing. However, because of Little White's recommendation jade slip, the Heaven Fire Doyen was still patient. He was prepared to listen to what Long Yu had to say. If he didn't say it well, then the Heaven Fire Doyen wouldn't give him any face. He was such a person. When Little White made a recommendation, he was willing to listen to Long Yu. However, if Long Yu didn't say it well, then Little White's recommendation jade slip would be useless. Now, Long Yu knew that the purpose of Little White's recommendation jade slip was to give Long Yu a chance to explain the situation. If it wasn't for the recommendation jade slip, Long Yu wouldn't even have a chance to explain the situation in front of the Heaven Fire Doyen. This made Long Yu feel grateful towards Little White. However, now wasn't the time for him to feel grateful. He racked his brains and had to make the entire situation attractive enough. From Long Yu's point of view, it would definitely be difficult to move the Heaven Fire Doyen. Since that was the case, Long Yu could only put himself in the Heaven Fire Doyen's shoes and think about it. Although he didn't understand the Heaven Fire Doyen, Long Yu could still speculate about the other party's needs. As a 7-stage Dominator Realm expert, as well as the top weapon refinement master and array master of the entire human and demon race, it was normal for the Heaven Fire Doyen to have a strange temper. Moreover, he definitely had his own goals now. Forge an even stronger battle weapon? To research more array formations? Or perhaps the Heaven Fire Doyen had other pursuits? Long Yu had to consider all these things. When he put himself in the Heaven Fire Doyen's shoes and thought about it, he quickly organized his words and prepared to use them to convince the Heaven Fire Doyen. Moreover, Long Yu was confident in his words. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.